Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 163. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, which you can see on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. on ABC TV and 8 p.m. on Fridays on ABC News, or anytime you like on iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America, or on YouTube on the ABC News In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening to us, you can also find PEP on YouTube and Facebook, where you will also find timestamps and show notes in the blurb and Dr. Dave's book list. Very exclusive. And if you leave a comment under those videos, we are likely to see it. Ideally in the week of the podcast. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to see it. You can also tweet us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at PepChazDrDave. If you want to contact me privately, ask me on Twitter. Oh my God, I haven't replied to these emails. I will allow you to direct message me or email me. The bane of my existence. We've got a holiday coming soon. I'm going to reply to emails at least during then. But for now it's time for the man. You know what I'm talking about. Give you a drum roll. Who never raises the stakes on inconsequential views. I'm, of course, talking about Dr. Pepper himself, Dr. David Smith.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm Dr. David Smith. In Mandarin, that's Dawe Sumisa. And I'm an associate professor at the United States Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. In Mandarin, that is Sini Daswe. But I do not speak for either of those institutions, either in English or in Mandarin.
I was going to check.
Yes, I only speak for myself when it comes to PEP. That is all that you are getting from me.
For your information at home, we are recording this at 2:01 p.m. in Sydney on Friday the 14th of June. And this has affected, this is one of those times where the time matters, because
quite a lot has happened.
It's affected my grateful.
Yeah. It's affected your grateful.
But let's start with yours. What are you grateful for,
I
Dave?
am grateful for two Chinese-Australian artists, Shen Jiawei and Wang Lan. They are married to each other. They live in Bundeena, and there has recently been a documentary made about them, which I saw at the Sydney Film Festival this week, called Welcome to Babel. Welcome to Babel is about Shen Jiawei's project of the last 10 years, which is this enormous painting that covers 4 walls of their house. Like, they built this house this 3-story house in Bundeena specifically to accommodate this painting. It's more than 200 square meters of painting, like 7 meters high, on the history of 20th century communism.
Wow.
And no matter how you feel about communism, there's probably something in this painting for you. It's an absolutely incredible visual document. There's more than 400 people are featured in this painting. There are more than 130 artworks by left-wing artists that are kind of remixed in this painting. And I mean, it goes into all kinds of things. There are scenes of tremendous brutality featuring the Chinese Cultural Revolution and Tiananmen Square. Shen Jiawei, incidentally, was a very famous portrait artist in China and a propaganda painter in China. He was a Red Guard. And after this movie is released, his works may be reevaluated, which is not the first time that's happened. It's an absolutely fantastic painting. To see it, you have to go to the Bundeena Art Trail, that's held the first Sunday of every month. If you live in Sydney, it's in Bundeena. That's that little village across Port Hacking from Cronulla, which you get to either by ferry or a very long drive through the national park.
So you're telling me there's enough art in Bundeena to create a trail?
Yeah. There's Bundeena is this village full of artists.
Oh, okay.
So I think there are something like 17 stops on this trail.
So this is like a Bayeux tapestry kind of a thing.
It's
of communism.
Yeah.
And how big is it?
As I said, more than 200 meters, more than 200 square meters.
I missed you saying that. Okay.
Of painting. So the highest panel is 7 meters high.
Wow.
There are 7.8 meters high.
Is it supposed to be indoors or outdoors?
It's indoors.
It's indoors, okay.
Yeah. It's indoors. I saw it at various stages while he was painting it. And so, he had this scaffold that he was using it. Most of the paintings that he's done are adapted from famous photos. He's had a very distinguished career. He painted John Howard. The painting of John Howard that hangs in the Members' Hall of Parliament House is him. He painted Pope Francis. He still regards himself as a communist, according to this documentary, but just not a communist in the sense of any other communist who's ever, communized.
Maybe he's the true communist.
Maybe, yes. He certainly he regards Mao and the CCP as a betrayal of communism.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
7 meters is very high up.
It is very high
Did he
up.
paint it up, or was it flat and then he put it up?
He did it in various stages, and it began with all of these smaller panels that he was drawing on, and gradually assembled everything. There are also very helpful little labels on this painting so that you can work out who he's talking about visually.
Okay, well, look, like I said, my gratitude has been changed because I had this little thing set up. I'll tell you what it was going to be, but I'll make it much shorter because I'm not going to do it properly.
Okay.
I was going to be grateful for AFL players, and in particular Collingwood players, who didn't destroy Christian Petrarca the other day. When he got a knee in his ribs, broke his ribs, lacerated his spleen, punctured his lung, kept on playing because he's an Aussie rules player.
Yes, yeah.
And it was obvious that he was like his face was changing colour.
Wow.
And he could have absolutely been poleaxed by the opposition. And they looked after him.
They decided not to. That's nice.
And you might think, well, that's just common sense, but that is not how it used to be.
No.
and I had some.
I remember the 1989 grand final.
I remember the 2005 round one match between the Lions and St Kilda. I was going to play some footage of that, but I'm not going to now because that's not my gratitude. I'm just saying. I'm grateful for Collingwood players for not being dickheads, but and AFL players in general for they're tough. They're as tough as they've ever been.
Yes,
they're not soft.
No,
because they're human. But they're not.
There are people complaining that they're soft.
Oh no one said Collingwood is soft for not destroying Christian Petrarca. But
what did Kane Corns have to say about this?
I haven't heard what he had to say yet. But
he was a couple of years below me in primary school.
You went to school with Kane Corns?
Yeah, both of the Corns brothers.
Did you bully him? Are you the reason for Kane Corns?
Oh, I had no idea who they were. Like I knew who
the origin story of Kane Corns.
I knew who their dad was. So their dad was because our primary school was right next to Glenelg Oval, where the Glenelg Tigers played, and at that point, Graham Corns was the coach of Glenelg. Yeah, so both of his kids were there, and Chad Corns I think was pretty well known. I didn't know about the existence of Kane Corns then, but anyway,
seems appropriate.
Yeah.
Anyway, no one's gone Collingwood, but just there's this whole attitude of the players they smile too much these days, they laugh too much, they're too friendly to each other. There's no spite, there's no nastiness, and you go, well, they hurt each other just as much.
Yeah.
In fact, they hurt. I think they hurt themselves more than people used to hurt. It's not with thuggery anymore. It's just with high velocity collisions between massive people.
Yes.
But anyway, that's not.
Yeah, if you ever get close to the actual ground and you hear the noise of the bodies colliding.
Oh God.
Just same with rugby league. It's one of those things you don't really get on TV. Yeah.
But my gratitude, I'm doing off the top of my head.
Yes.
I haven't read about this story.
Okay.
This is only just broken for, at least in my world.
Right.
I was not across the Supreme Court thing at all until I was told.
Oh, yeah.
I was told like an hour ago. By John, because I, of course, wasn't reading last night because I was preparing PEP and the script for this week's for today's Planet America. I'm grateful for 9-0. That's what I'm grateful for. I don't even know the ins and outs of it, but we covered this case in detail several times on PEP.
Yeah.
So if you want to know my view about it, you can go back and have a look.
The ins and outs of it are, it's a joke that this ever made it to the Supreme Court in the first place.
This is what I'm saying.
It is such a blatantly legally wrong challenge that even Alito and Thomas weren't able to go in favour of.
Well, this is what I was going to say. I'm not sure we're going to cover it next week. Normally, something breaks on Friday, we'll cover it next week. I'm not sure we're going to because I feel like if this is about the standing issue, then in that abortion pill case, then it was all about the standing issue. Well, that's all it was about. Well, we covered that in extreme detail the first time. So I'm not going to recover it, but it was just an obscenity that got to the Supreme Court. It was outrageous. That Kazmarek guy is such a gooner for allowing that to get through his court. Have some dignity, mate. That was such a poor decision on your behalf. And the fifth and that the Fifth Circuit allowed to get through them is also humiliating to
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And I just love that even Alito and Thomas said, nah, slap that down. That's bullshit.
Yes.
Because it was. So, and we need more of these 9-0s in these circumstances to embarrass the Kazmareks of this world to not do that kind of thing.
You're forgetting they're unembarrassable.
Well, hopefully, if anyone can shame him, it's Alito.
Okay, yeah.
I would have thought. So,
Yeah.
so I am grateful for the 9-0. And
Okay.
let's have a few more of them.
Okay. Sorry, while I remember, that documentary that I was talking about, it's called Welcome to Babel. It was shown a couple of times at Sydney Film Festival. It will have a broader cinematic release in Australia in September or October, though who knows how much. The director is James Bradley. So, just to complete the plug there.
Sure.
Okay.
Fair enough. Let's get into correspondence. We've got
Yes.
some verdict correspondence first up. A few people responded to my suggestion last week that justice would involve Trump getting something like the same sentence Hillary Clinton's campaign got for a similar offense. Remember, Hillary Clinton's campaign settled in 2022 for their false labeling of campaign expenses, similar charge to Trump. They copped a $113,000 fine. I said off the cuff when we were talking about this, I hadn't thought, and I said that just in passing, but I hadn't really thought of a fairly important point, which the Peppers thought of for me. A number of them thought of this for me, I have to say. I'll quote Shannon here. In response to the perceived equivalence between Trump and Hillary campaign records in 2016, the fact that Clinton settled would imply acknowledgement of wrongdoing.
Yes.
We can agree the crime was equivalent, but as with the secret docs, the secret docs case, Trump's response was not.
That's true.
As 100%
That
true.
is very, very true.
Not only did Trump not settle, but he then proceeded to abuse the judge and every person who tried to hold him to account for years.
Yes.
And he still doesn't admit wrongdoing, even now.
Yeah,
so
true.
that is very different. Also
Yes.
from Richard, I'll quote him saying, I agree, a fine of $113,000 would be inadequate. Clinton paid that, but they didn't plead not guilty and force a trial and then keep claiming innocence, as well as the contempt needs to be factored in. Yes, the contempt does need to be factored in as well.
It certainly does.
I did forget that. That is true. So when you throw that all in, I agree with the many, many Peppers who chose me for that one. I agree that justice would require a stiffer sentence. Maybe when you consider the contempt and you consider the lack of remorse and you consider the not copping to a plea, maybe that gets them to exactly where I desperately want them to be, which is in community service
Picking up
territory.
garbage. Picking up garbage.
Come on, Mashan. Come on. Get him picking up rubbish in the street. Has to be in the street.
Yep.
I want him in a jumpsuit. I want it to be in public. I want there to be jeers. I want there to be photos. I want it to be hot. I want it to be during the summer. Come on, Mashan. Get it happening. Community service, please. So I think we can all agree on that.
Absolutely. Make Chaz's lurid fantasies come true.
Nick adds one more point about this whole trial and whether it was worth pursuing these charges in this single-minded way they did. Nick says there is significant social value in holding high-profile people like politicians or business leaders to account.
I agree.
You talked a lot about faith in the judicial system this episode. That was in Chaz Unleashed.
Yes.
And I would make the case that it's important to said faith or societal trust in institutions generally that the rich and powerful are prosecuted for their crimes, because otherwise it feeds into the corrosive attitude that Trump is trying to cultivate, that the system is rigged against you. That is the white working class in his case. And nothing matters, and we should just smash it all to pieces, blah, blah, blah. If anything, leaders should be held to a higher standard, not, as you seem to be advocating, given a few freebies for their crimes because you're worried about pissing off their supporters. Plus, as Dave has pointed out on numerous occasions, the treatment Trump has received from the legal system is a lot more favourable than almost anyone else would get, again, because of his high-profile position. He's already getting the life on easy mode, kid glove treatment reserved for billionaires, and due to his own hubris and incompetence, he still got convicted.
That's right.
Not arguing with you, Nick. Sounds reasonable to me.
Well said.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Jury's correspondence. We asked whether a juror had to restrict their judgment to what is in evidence or if they could use common sense. They came through as you predicted they would.
Yep.
Polite Body writes, I believe Judge Mashan addressed the use of common sense in his jury instructions.
Oh, okay.
When he used the analogy of waking up in the morning and seeing that the roads and pavement are wet. You didn't see, hear, or feel it rain during the night, but it's fair to assume that it did. The plight is right.
Yes.
I forgot that bit of the instructions. I'll read them to you now. This is a quote from Shen.
Okay.
In evaluating the evidence, you may consider any fact that is proven and any inference which may be drawn from such fact.
Okay, good.
To draw an inference means to infer, find, conclude that a fact exists or does not exist based upon proof of some other fact or facts. For example, suppose you go to bed one night when it's not raining, and when you wake up in the morning, you look out your window, you do not see rain, but you see that the street and sidewalk are wet and the people are wearing raincoats and carrying umbrellas. Under those circumstances, it may be reasonable to infer, that is, conclude, that it rained during the night.
Either that or Chuckles has been going around licking everything again.
It may be reasonable to infer. That was Chuckles. That wasn't me being sarcastic. Chuckles just came out for a moment. It may be reasonable to infer, that is, conclude that it rained during the night. In other words, the fact of it having rained while you're asleep is an inference that might be drawn from the proven facts of the presence of the water on the street and sidewalk and people in raincoats and carrying umbrellas. An inference must only be drawn from a proven fact or facts, and then only if the inference flows naturally, reasonably, and logically from the proven fact or facts, not if it is speculative.
Okay.
Therefore, in deciding whether to draw an inference, you must look at and consider all the facts in the light of reason, common sense, and experience. You use the word common sense. All right, so that confirms for me personally a guilty verdict based on what I said last week.
Okay.
Based on the evidence and instructions available at the trial. And for those wondering about other locations, Sad Squid said about Australia, quote, I was recently on jury duty here in Australia and they used the exact same example as Shen did.
Okay.
To explain how we can use common sense inferences. So it seems to be a legal thing.
Good.
So there we go. Transcripts, correspondence. Now, a few people weighed into our discussion about whether jurors should have access to transcripts or not.
Yeah.
In this case, they're on my side.
Okay.
Phasma says, after listening to both of your points, I agree with you, Chaz, and disagree with Dr. Dave about the reliance on jurors' memories. We recently had multiple episodes discussing how it was understandable that Biden couldn't remember when Beau died.
That's true.
I myself cannot sit through any sort of training or conference which goes for hours, let alone days, and concentrate or remember all of it. As you said, people's lives are on the line. The fallibility of human memory should be limited as a factor as much as possible. It actually occurred to me as I read Phasma's comment that you yourself made the point about 10 minutes later that there was no such thing as photographic memory.
Yes. Okay, yes, yeah. I think I may have been a bit inconsistent here.
And another person, while we're at it, before you do any mea culpas, another person noted, and I have ironically forgotten their name, that if what you were saying is right, Dave, about how different a transcript is to the recorded word, then that's a powerful reason to release the tapes of Biden from his special counsel interview, even though the transcript is already out there. So are you on the side of the House Republicans on this debate?
Well, it would be a powerful reason if that was the only factor involved, the discrepancy between the written word and the spoken word. The reason why the FBI won't release that is because they don't want to reveal things about the way that they operate.
Oh, I think they don't want.
That's a reasonable...
Go on.
That's a perfectly reasonable reason for withholding it.
Yeah, I personally think they don't want the next person to who's asked if they can be recorded to think, oh yeah, and then create a headache for myself in 6 months.
Yes, yeah. No, the FBI's reasons for that are they go well beyond Anyway.
But what you were about to say? No,
I agree. I agree with the point that the Peppers have made. Yeah. I should be consistent with what I've said previously about the fallibility of memory, which is a major point that I'm always making to students, among other things. So yes, it is entirely consistent with the fallibility of memory.
Okay, we're all taking backward steps here, but you are rewarded, Dave, with the next correspondence, the Ninja Correspondence. Pres Ben helps you out in your pick as the worst ninja movie ever. Oh. He says the movie you're looking for is Three Ninjas High Noon at Mega Mountain. So there you go. There you go, Dave.
High Noon at Mega Mountain. It's even better than I remember it being. Yes.
So that's your award.
Thank you, Buster Canberra. Now you know where to look it up.
As an aficionado of shit ninja movies, though, I still maintain the movie that you all want, even though you don't know it, is Sakura Killers. And it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. I looked it up.
All the best movies are on YouTube.
It's a sure sign.
Yes.
You got a great movie.
No one cares about the copyright.
I'm going to put in the homework. You can look at yourself. It goes for an hour and a half. Enjoy. I will warn you, if you want to recreate what it's like to be a smart ass hiring the worst movie in the video shop in the 1980s, this is how you do it. Secure Killers. I watched it many times. So it's right there in the blur. Also for you, Dave, Akron Correspondence, Akron, Ohio Correspondence, open-minded says, in defense of Akron coolness, both Devo and the Black Keys are from there.
Yeah, but cool bands come from places that aren't cool.
That's true.
This is the reason. Like, Nirvana came from Aberdeen, Washington.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is true. Dr. Correspondence, Dr. Pseudonym writes, I guess this could count as a fun piece of medical-related trivia, but on the subject of titles, physicians generally like being called doctor, but surgeons, in Britain especially, may prefer to be addressed as Mr. or Miss.
Yes.
It stems back to a time in the 18th century when surgeons were not seen as being as qualified as physicians, so they could not use the title doctor.
That's right.
But as surgery advanced, it became more of an actual honorific. So maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene was actually paying respect to Dr. Fauci by insisting on calling him Mr. in her hearing. Maybe. Have we considered that?
No.
While we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, some Marjorie Taylor Greene correspondence.
Okay.
Kangaroo Bob writes,
Yeah.
can we please stop giving Marjorie Taylor Greene airtime? I find her less interesting and more annoying than Tucker Carlson, which is saying a lot. At least when Tucker was speaking, we were learning what was being peddled to his listeners. Do we know of anyone who cares what Marjorie Taylor Greene says? I got bad news for you, Kangaroo Bob. She's a genuine player in the GOP. Even if her colleagues hate her, and they do, she raises so much money, they're scared of her. She is a power center because she raises so much money. Certainly, she's on Bannon's podcast almost every day. Yeah. She's on more than any other politician.
Yes,
and Bannon's podcast is super influential in MAGA circles.
I am quite sympathetic to Kangaroo Bob here.
Yes.
But unfortunately, she is a part of the political landscape that we can't actually ignore.
And all I have to say to you...
Like, we could ignore Lauren Boebert.
Yeah.
We choose not
to. We usually
could ignore Nancy Mace, who, by the way, congratulations on your primary victory.
We're not ignoring Nancy Mace today.
Yeah, but we choose not to.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, you just can't actually look at Congress at the moment without ignoring her, unfortunately. So we're not going to.
And I have bad news for you, Kangaroo Bob. If you don't like her, you wait till you see the people who replace her.
Yes.
Because it ain't getting better. Also, I mean, look, how can you not enjoy someone this stupid?
And you think gas prices are high now? Just wait until you're forced to drive an electric vehicle. Exactly. Yes.
I play that long because even though the laugh is straight away, I love the fact she's so proud of it. She just does a few laps around and go, yeah, exactly. Yes. How good is this thought? She's really proud of that thought.
And although it's not the main point, I will always love the pronunciation vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. No problems.
Absolutely love it.
Let me make the point here.
Yes.
Apart from the obvious that electric vehicles obviously don't use gas and electricity is much cheaper than petrol. Leaving that aside.
Yeah.
Like just from an economics point of view, if you're ever forced to drive electric vehicles, then petrol will presumably become really cheap.
You would think so.
Yeah, so it's just so many ways in which that makes no sense.
Maybe we should get Greg Jericho onto this one.
When I get Greg Jericho on, I'm not going to waste his time.
Okay, sorry, Greg. Sorry, Greg. We won't waste your time.
Greg actually is a pepper, and Greg, I apologise on behalf of the podcast for Dave's sacrilege of bringing your name in vain for this shit. And ranked choice correspondence from Josh.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the threat of these third-party candidates in our own system. If either of the main presidential candidates promised to introduce preferential voting if they're re-elected, would that be something the federal government could do? Would it need to be a constitutional amendment, or could they do it through Congress? Or would it need to be done state by state? Do you think some of the values-based voters could be persuaded to vote for them in order to get a more representative system moving forward? I know it's a bit an out there hypothetical, but I just wonder if the third-party curious voters might be persuaded by the promise of change. And both of the candidates are currently running for the second term, so it wouldn't hurt their chances at re-election. Not that I could see Trump doing this. Okay. Do you want to answer this, or do you want me to answer this?
Do you want me to have a shot at answering it first?
Sure, go for it, yeah.
So The problem here is that electoral law is organised at the state level, and there has been massive resistance to any kind of federalisation of it. So that's your first obstacle there. If something like ranked choice was to be federalised, if there was even a proposal that it could be federalised, first you'd have to federalise all kinds of other aspects of election law, which there's been a huge amount of resistance to. So aside from the implausibility of ranked choice voting happening, because I could imagine someone offering it as a proposal, the greater implausibility is that federalisation of election law. Now, the fact is that ranked choice voting has happened in a couple of places, so it's not impossible. But the places where it has happened, as we've discussed before on these shows, they're pretty maverick kind of places, Maine and Alaska. These places in many ways, they've got pretty distinctive, unique politics, distinctive, unique electorates. I can imagine it happening in other places, but I can't. At least for the moment, it's hard to imagine it happening everywhere. And certainly there'd be a lot of places where there's just no way the incumbents, whoever they are, whether it's entrenched Democrats or entrenched Republicans, would ever let it happen. Yeah.
All I would add to that is, it would definitely have to be state by state.
Yes.
No doubt about that. All I'll add to that is what you might not realise, and I must say, if I did realise it, I forgot, is that I knew about the state level ranked choice voting in Maine and Alaska.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that Maine already does presidential ranked choice voting. In 2020, they did ranked choice voting.
Did they?
They did.
I didn't even know
It didn't matter because Biden got 53% in his part.
Yeah.
And the part that Trump got, he got 50-something% as well.
Yeah.
So it didn't make any difference. Because ranked choice voting is just the same as normal voting.
Yeah.
I
didn't know that at all.
I didn't know. But they have ranked choice voting at the presidential level.
Yeah.
They're the only state that does that.
Yes.
Alaska has ranked choice voting for everything but the presidential level.
Yes.
But Maine's already there. And so you could do it state by state.
Yeah.
Alaska has a Final Four system for everything but the presidential system, which is basically a pooled primary where they all do the primary together, and the top four have a ranked choice system in the actual election, general election day. Another thing you might not know, because it's gotten almost no publicity, is that this year is a big year for Final Four. Nevada, Colorado, Idaho, and Montana all have it on the ballot. And what that means is that now I don't think they're all going to get up because there's bipartisan opposition, obviously.
Yep.
Both the Democrats and the Republicans, neither of them like Final Four. But if by some miracle they all got up, maybe because people hate the major parties so much, you then have 10 senators appointed by ranked choice voting.
Yeah.
And yes, they're from different parties potentially, so that's not 10 together. But we're getting to a point where you can almost overcome a filibuster with ranked choice voting senators. And when you get to that, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of ranked choice voting is to make them more moderate. And so you have the potential to overcome filibuster. So especially if it becomes 12 or 14 senators down the power line. So let's watch that carefully.
Yes.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I've gotten you to do a correspondence, Dave, but given the time, let's do that later on.
Okay, yes.
Let's get into the content. And let's start with you talking about Hunter Biden.
Okay. So Hunter Biden was convicted this week.
He was.
He was found...
Breaking news.
Found guilty. Yeah, breaking news. Found guilty very, very quickly by these jurors of the 3 gun-related offences. Yeah. It seems to be widely agreed that the thing that did him in was the fact that he talked extensively in his own memoir about being a drug addict at the time that he brought these guns and obviously failing to fill that out on his form.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, he got convicted. What happened next? Democrats, with the exception of Joe Biden, could barely conceal their glee.
Yes.
About the verdict. They were lining up to talk about how much they respected this verdict and how much they respect the rule of law.
Yes.
Now, Biden, for his part, I thought gave a very dignified statement saying he supported his son, But he also supported the rule of law and would continue to support it during the appeals process. We have to imagine how hard this actually is for Biden at this point, because we know how much he cares about his kids.
Yeah.
And, facing an election campaign aside, imagine being 82 years old and your son is facing a potentially lengthy term in prison.
And he knows that Hunter Biden committed his crimes.
Yes.
But he knows the reason he's being charged is because of him.
Yes. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Yeah. So, I do feel pretty sorry for Joe Biden at this point, but he's putting a very good face on it. But as I said, Democrats are loving this verdict. They're loving it because it gives them a chance to say, look how in favour of the rule of law we are, and look how impartial the Department of Justice is.
Yes.
They charged the president's own son, they convicted the president's own son, and we think that's great because we're Democrats and we support the rule of law.
Yes.
So I can imagine that Joe Biden himself might be getting a little bit pissed off with exactly how performatively in favour of the rule of law all the Democrats are being at the moment. But okay, now over to the other side of the ledger. We haven't heard a huge amount from Republicans. It's been this combination of muted celebration and whining is most of what we've heard.
I'm saying more whining than muted celebration.
Yeah. So there's been this sort of like, it's good, but this is a distraction, as Trump's campaign put it. This is a distraction from the real crimes of the Biden family.
Oh, can I tell you my favourite bit about the Trump statement before we move on?
Yep.
Which is that I'll read out the statement. This is the original statement. You'll see why I said original in a second. This trial has been nothing more than a distraction from the real crimes of the Biden crime family, like Dave said, which has raked in tens of millions of dollars from China, Russia, and Ukraine. Crooked Joe Biden's reign over the Biden family criminal empire is all coming to an end on November 5th, and never again will the Bidens sell government access for personal profit. As for Hunter, we wish him well in his recovery and legal affairs. That's a nice little note at the end, isn't it? Except for then they put out another statement like an hour later where they left off the last line.
Oh, that is just so vindictive.
Obviously, someone like the boss didn't like that.
No.
And so they got rid of it.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. I love how they can talk with a straight face about the Bidens selling access to foreign powers.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yes. So there's been a lot of whining about how this is a distraction from the real crimes. Or there's been a lot of, this is just the beginning. Like now, let's do Joe Biden. As we've talked about a lot on this podcast, Republicans have been trying to find anything on Joe Biden for years, employing the full powers of the federal government, and have come up with absolutely nothing. But they can keep talking about it and, keep giving their donors the impression that it's just around the corner. Just around the corner, they're going to get him. Now, speaking of that, Jonathan Swan and Maggie Haberman, as they want to do, reported in the New York Times that there were a lot of discussions in place about, like, if Biden gets acquitted, how we're going to raise money off this. And they said that actually a lot of Trump allies are disappointed in the verdict. They wanted an innocent verdict in order to show conclusively that the justice system is rigged against Trump and in favor of the Bidens, but they did not get it. I don't know how much I don't know how much this credibility this story actually has. It's one of these things that sounds plausible. As you've pointed out before, the Trump campaign is not as leaky as it was 4 years ago. So there's far fewer of these sort of Haberman and Swan type stories based on leaks. But this one was back to the classics kind of. They did get a lot of people saying, we were hoping.
I'll tell you why I believe it.
Why?
The reason why I believe it is because when you watch the last week's coverage of the trial, they were building up to an innocent verdict.
Who thought that it was going to be innocent?
People who were deluded and who people who have actually drunk the Kool-Aid and actually believe that the whole thing is rigged.
Like,
I mean, go.
I just thought it was so obvious.
I know. Well, a lot of people said, in fact, I think this was a Jonathan Turley special.
Yeah.
Was that this was the next most democratic district available other than Manhattan.
Yeah.
Like, so it's actually, he said
that's true.
He said it was like a parallel
to
the Trump trial, except for this time it was a Democrat who was on trial, and so they might get off for that reason because just like the Manhattan jury would convict any Republican for anything, the Wilmington jury might not convict any Democrat for anything. Like that was their kind of logic. And they're building to this because, and when I say that, I'm not talking about the Turley thing. I'm talking about the fact that you looked at a narrative this week and it was about, first of all, Joe Biden visiting Haley Biden directly before she testified, witness tampering. Jill Biden, even though he's related to her. Jill Biden, and she's the mother of his granddaughter.
Yes.
Here's a lot of the reasons to visit her.
Yeah.
Jill Biden turning up to the court to intimidate the jury, to eyeball them.
Really?
Yeah, to eyeball them like a mafioso. I
love it that, the last 8 years of Trump has warped Republicans' understandings of what normal family relations look like so much that they think that if a family member turns up to support someone in court, it must be because they're trying to intimidate the jury.
Yes. Yeah. A number of people mentioned the fact that on Fox that about like a year ago, when the Hunter Biden was first in the news for this stuff, Joe Biden said on the record, my son didn't do anything wrong or something like that. They're going, look at him trying to lay down the law to the Department of Justice to lay off his son, like it's just this inappropriate bullying. And you just go,
again, they no longer remember what it's like to see a father having an abnormal emotional reaction to his son.
Yeah. But not
because
just...
that, they've never seen that during the Trump period.
But I was going to say, but also, not just that, they seem to have forgotten the entire Trump period because that is so mild compared to what we've become used to. But anyway, the fact that they were doing this kind of stuff meant that they were gearing up for a not guilty verdict.
Yes, yeah.
So they go, look, this is all rigged, this is all fixed, this is corrupt. So that I do think that's what they were gearing to. And I agree with you. It was insane on their behalf.
Yeah.
But I think that's where they were going.
Wow. Okay. Well.
Yeah.
Sorry to everyone who was hoping for a not guilty verdict for whatever reason. But it was never going to happen. Obviously.
No, God no.
So he is going to appeal. I don't imagine the appeal getting very far.
I think he's going to jail.
Yeah, I think he probably is going to jail. Now, this carries up to a 10-year prison sentence. This, once again, first-time non-violent offender probably won't get that. But I think he's going to end up getting more harshly punished than Trump.
Oh, absolutely.
Very different kind of crime.
On the gun possession charge alone, nothing else. The guidelines recommend 10 to 16 months in prison for a first offender.
Yes, yeah.
10 to 16 months. And that's before we even begin the tax charges, which are around the corner.
Yeah, that's the next one.
He's going to jail.
He is.
Which, by the way, by the tax charges, he's also guilty of.
Yes, he's going to jail. And by the way, Biden has also saed explicitly he will not pardon or commute.
No, he said pardon. He didn't say commute.
Oh, okay.
Karine Jean-Pierre said last year when this was first brought up that he wouldn't pardon or commute.
Right.
But since then, he was asked the other day about pardoning. And he said no pardons. Mm-hmm. Then Karine Jean-Pierre, they didn't ask him about commuting.
Right, yeah.
Karine Jean-Pierre was asked whether he'd commute, and she said, I have no comment to make. His comments speak for themselves.
Okay.
Whatever. So, look, there's no reason to think that he's been tricky with his wording.
No,
he just hasn't been asked yet.
Yes. Yep.
So I suspect he will be asked very soon.
I think so.
Yes. Go on.
Yeah. Well, no, that's it. Really.
No, okay, all right. Well,
this is actually a pretty straightforward story.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, I'll say a couple of things. First, the first.
Have we played the Hunter music yet?
No, let's play it now.
Hunter, with his very smart cat in his mouth.
Thank you for reminding me.
We couldn't let that opportunity go begging. We don't know how many opportunities we're going to get to play this when he's in prison.
So glad you remind me because the Peppers would be really pissed off.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
My single greatest contribution to human existence is bringing that back.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. That is your
Bring
legacy.
That song back to the ABC.
That is your legacy.
There.
You know, last Wednesday's Planet America, we got a copyright strike on YouTube. We still don't know what it was for. I'd like to think it was because we played the Hunter music. I mean, I don't think it is, but I'd like to think that.
Finally, the Hunter copyright owners have woken up.
Anyway. We still haven't worked out what it was. It's very strange. I had Ronan Keating there, but it wasn't that. Because then we tried to put Ronan Keating up again. Tried to put the episode up again without Ronan Keating.
Right.
And it still got copyright striked. We don't know. Anyway.
I mean, it could be anything.
It really could.
Like, you include more little samples than the avalanches.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
We do. We're real pilferers.
Yeah.
We're little bowerbirds. Okay. All right, because I got a few things to say about this.
Okay.
First, I want to make just a random point about the immunity deals leading up to this, because this has been a lot of people are across the fact that there was there was a disagreement amongst the immunity deal, amongst the prosecution and defense last year, when there was an immunity deal on the table, about the extent of the immunity deal.
Yeah.
Where the prosecutors thought immunity was just for the guns, drugs, and tax charges. At least that's what they said.
Yeah.
And Hunter's team thought it was for immunity for all of his business arrangements.
Sure.
For 3 years.
Yep.
That wasn't the problem.
Okay. What
because
was the problem?
Hunter's lawyer then agreed to the narrower immunity.
Right. Okay.
They just explicitly agreed to it. Just drop the business arrangements.
Yep.
The issue was the agreement made the judge the arbiter of any alleged breaches in the agreement.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yep.
And normally it would be the Department of Justice that's the arbiter.
Right.
But they explicitly made the judge the arbiter because the defense were worried that Trump would be returned to power. How's that for confidence in your dad? It too, Hunter. They were worried that Trump was going to win the election, and then he would get revenge on Biden by screwing around with Hunter's conditions of parole and all the rest of it. Which, maybe they were right to worry about that.
They were definitely right.
And so they were trying to get the judge to be in charge rather than the Department of Justice. The judge understood what they were doing, but she said she thought it should be the Department of Justice. The judge called for at least further briefings about this.
Yeah.
So they went away. Then Weiss, who's a special counsel, offered the same deal again without the Department of Justice being the arbiter. Hunter's team said no, but they then were going to go into negotiations. Around about then is when the House Republicans started to turn the heat up on Weiss.
Okay, yep.
And they started to say, oh, he's really biased. And by the way, for those who, I'm doing a little diversion from a diversion here, but for those who I've heard that talking point a lot about he's a Republican, to be fair to the Republicans making that, going Weiss, he isn't your average Republican. He's a Delaware Republican. He's a Delaware Republican who was suggested by the Democratic senators. He was they didn't just approve him, they suggested him. And he's also someone who worked with Beau Biden. And so he's he's part of the family a bit, even though he's a Republican. Yeah. So it's saying that he's a Republican isn't necessarily an indication that he's independent. But anyway, they were turning the heat up on him, and he obviously felt it, and so then he dropped any plea deals at that point in time. That was what is the Republicans who killed the plea deal. Yes, it wasn't the circumstances with the judge. Yeah. So I just want to put that out there. Also, I am going to give James Comer credit here. Jesus. His reaction was almost the only reaction from a Republican I thought that made sense.
Okay.
Like in that, I didn't think it was brilliant, but it was just, you just go, okay, that's reasonable. That's not stupid. His reaction was, today's verdict is a step towards accountability, but until the Department of Justice investigates everyone involved in the Biden's corrupt influence peddling schemes that generated over $18 million in foreign payments to the Biden family.
Sorry.
Hang on. It'll be clear department officials continue to cover for the big guy, Joe Biden. Okay, so say what you're going to say. Okay.
That is not an example of what you were just talking about.
No, that is logical. I'm not saying that I agree with him, but it's at least it follows a logic. If you think that what I'm saying, if you think that's too low a standard, I'm about to go through the other Republicans.
Okay. it follows a logic in the sense that it doesn't contradict itself.
Yes, exactly.
That is an incredibly low bar.
Yes, you'd think that. Let me introduce. Let me start with. Let's start with Stephen Miller.
Okay.
The gun charges are a giant misdirection.
Giant misdirection.
An easy op for DOJ to sell to a pliant media that is all too willing to be duped.
Easy op.
Don't be gaslit. This is all about protecting Joe Biden and only Joe Biden.
Yeah, but that also follows a logic.
Does it? What's the logic?
The logic is
Yeah.
that this whole thing is a cover-up.
Yeah.
That is as logical as Comer's statement.
The logic here is that this was a distraction from the real crimes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So Joe Biden
Yes.
has allowed his only living son to go to jail
Yeah.
as a distraction.
Once again, these are Republicans who have spent the last years having their sense of morality and family values warped by Trump. Of course they think that someone's going to sacrifice their son.
Okay. All right. Okay, let me put this to you.
Yeah.
Let me put this to you. That was only an after verdict.
Right.
From Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
I've got a Mike Davis before and after.
Okay, good.
Before, Mike Davis said, the evidence, Mike Davis is possibly the next Attorney General. The evidence is crystal clear that Hunter Biden violated federal law, which should lead to a guilty verdict and conviction. Yet President Biden's henchmen are working to ensure nothing will ever happen to Hunter, and a Delaware jury may render a not guilty verdict. Like I said, we knew where they were driving.
Yeah.
After the verdict, he said, Hunter Biden's guilty verdict is nothing more than a sideshow.
Okay, yeah.
This is where I'm driving.
Yes. Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
But there's another contradiction. If this is such a sideshow, he also at the same time was trying to ramp up how if Hunter Biden doesn't go to jail, the fix is in because 97% of people who get found guilty of these charges go to jail.
Right, yep.
So it's a sideshow where people go to jail. That kind of sideshow.
Jail sideshow.
That kind of sideshow. Like Sideshow Bob maybe.
Yes.
Went to jail.
Good one.
And if this is all about distracting from the real crimes, then why don't the Republicans just impeach Joe Biden with the real crimes?
Yeah.
Simple.
That's right.
They've got the House.
Yes.
So easy.
They've had the hearings.
So easy.
They've discovered conclusive evidence that they can't get conclusive evidence because Democrats aren't turning it over. Yeah.
Let me go to the second kind of logic, because that's the first kind of logic.
Okay.
The second kind of logic, which you missed, so I'm glad to slip in here, is the kind of logic where I'll just quote, sorry, Kangaroo Bob, I'll quote Marjorie Taylor Greene. The only reason they convicted Hunter on 3 counts in comparison with President Trump's whopping 34 false felony charges is to give the appearance of blind justice. The American people don't buy it. I like this logic because it suggests that Hunter Biden was found, because he was found guilty, that proves the system is rigged. I like that. I think that's nice. And a reminder, Trump was convicted as a result of a city-level investigation.
That's right.
That began a year before Joe Biden announced he was running for president.
Yes.
So that's some foresight from Joe Biden.
That really is.
So he's plotting this out.
Yes.
But here's where you get to my favorite bits.
Yeah.
The combo of
Yes.
the two of them together.
Yeah.
Charlie Kirk, Hunter Biden, guilty. Yawn. The true crimes of the Biden crime family remain untouched. This is a fake trial trying to make the justice system appear balanced. Don't fall for it. Both of them at once. Ramaswamy, this is gold.
Oh,
have you seen this? This is wonderful. This is what I'm going to split this into 2.
I haven't, but he's become one of our go-to
This is classic Ramaswamy.
statement makers.
Yeah. This is classic brain twister from Ramaswamy. I'm going to play the first 15 seconds, then we'll come back to the rest.
So Hunter Biden was convicted. Big frickin' deal. This trial was a sham. Just like the Trump trial, it was a sham, but a sham for a different reason. It's a sham designed to legitimize the Trump conviction. That's why it came right after, even for charges that date way far back.
He admits explicitly the charges were from way far back, but yet somehow they arranged for it to be straight after the Trump. He explicitly says these things.
Yes, yeah.
Like it's a Republican judge who's scheduled Hunter Biden's trial, so she's in on it as well.
Yeah.
It's just wheels within wheels, Dave.
Yeah.
Can I also point out that that Ramaswamy also thinks that Biden has set up a scheme where he sends his own son to jail once again to spin Trump's conviction just a teensy bit.
Yes, yeah.
You get nothing else. It's just a little bit of spin. It's a day's worth of spin.
Yes, yeah.
Even though the Menendez trial is happening at exactly the same time, and that works just as well.
Yeah.
I
will say that, to come back to the original point, all of this is stupid.
Yeah.
But all of it actually does follow some logic.
I disagree. I think there's no logic.
I took a couple of courses in formal logic as an undergraduate. All of this could actually be mapped out with symbolic logic.
I'm looking forward to some Boolean correspondence next week, though. Maybe.
For the real logic heads out there, see if you can do these statements in Sheffer-stroke.
Okay.
The Sheffer-stroke is this insane system of formal logic that involves only one operator.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're
going to have to judge this if someone does this.
Yes, yeah.
I can't do this.
Yeah.
My knowledge is exhausted with the word Boolean.
Yeah.
But okay, let's get more Ramaswamy. From the same statement, directly after the first reason, we have this.
But it also avoids accountability for the Biden crime family on the actual things that Hunter Biden should have been charged for. Like, for example, peddling foreign influence while his actual father, Joe Biden, was the vice president of the United States. Hunter had no business serving on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, a state-affiliated energy company that's affiliated with the same country, Ukraine, that his father, now as the U.S. president, is sending hundreds of billions of dollars of your taxpayer money to. That's where the real crimes lie.
Okay, so just to be clear, where the real crimes lie is Hunter Biden serving on the board of a Ukrainian oil company. And then his dad forwarding billions of taxpayers' money 10 years later after a war has started and Ukraine has been invaded. Apparently that Hunter Biden and the Ukrainians had the foresight to see that invasion coming, which hadn't occurred at that point in time. And maybe it's all part of the same conspiracy. Maybe the Russians are part of it as well. To generate this scenario where to justify the billions of dollars from Joe Biden when it's really just a bribe from Hunter Biden being on that board. That's his logic.
Yeah.
You're going to need more than, was it the Sheffer-stroke system?
Yes,
I think to make this make sense.
Yeah.
I really do. But look, once again, you can think that James Comer is just as bad as that. I think that is a whole different world to James Comer. I really do. All right. Okay. So let me just add a couple of other logical thoughts to this. If this trial was always about balancing Trump, then why did they try to short circuit with the plea deal last year?
Yes.
And when they tried to, if I recall, the Republicans were angry about that and demanded this trial. What was going on?
Look,
maybe the Republicans are in on the conspiracy as well. It just gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
It's amazing. All right. Okay. I've probably said enough about this.
I think. I don't think we need to go into any more detailed logical refutations.
I think we're there. Okay, yes. All right. One more bit of annoying bit of spin. This is a completely different thing now. This actually just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Because like you say, I actually think that Biden call me biased if you want. I think Joe Biden has dealt with this pretty well.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Hunter Biden's dealt with it pretty well as well.
Yeah,
I think Hunter Biden is obviously was a real tool.
Yes.
But right now, I think he's taken his medicine.
Yes,
I think he's just...
He's achieved a level of dignity that we don't normally associate with him.
Yeah.
But also that has never been achieved by Trump in any context whatsoever.
Yeah, and the man has been under serious pressure
He really
for
has.
3 or 4 years.
Yes.
And as an ex-addict, he could have relapsed. He could have...
Yeah.
Like, there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong.
Yes.
I think he's actually dealt with it okay.
Yeah.
His reaction, by the way, was, I am more grateful today for the love and support I experienced this last week from Melissa, my family, my friends, my community than I am disappointed by the outcome. Recovery is possible by the grace of God, and I am blessed to experience that gift one day at a time.
Okay.
Seems reasonable enough to me.
Yeah.
Right, Jesse Waters didn't like that.
Oh, no.
Jesse Waters says the problem is, and once again, remember this is from a Trump fan.
Yes, yeah.
There wasn't enough remorse.
Oh.
Let me play Jesse Waters.
There's no contrition at all by the Biden family. Hunter didn't show any remorse. He was smiling afterwards. His father's not ashamed, wouldn't even gently condemn his son's actions. Hunter's committed more crimes than we can count, and all Biden says is he's proud. The reason Hunter's broken the law for 30 years and not paid the piper is because of his dad. If every time I screwed up, and my dad's response was, I'm proud, son, I love you, I'd keep screwing up.
I got some bad news for you, Jesse. You have kept screwing up. Isn't that what your dad's saying to you? But maybe if it's your dad's fault, you should let him know that it's time for him to change his tune, whatever it is. I mean, that is just... I just can't believe they're going him for a lack of remorse.
He's committed more crimes you can count.
Once again...
3.
Well,
there's an actual specific number. The number is 3.
To be fair, I think we all know Jesse Waters is thinking there's more coming, right?
Yes,
and more that haven't been charged and all this. That's fine.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, you make a good point. But just like we are literally less than a week from after Trump's trial, and he's having a go at Hunter Biden and Joe Biden
for a lack of contrition.
For a lack of contrition.
Yes.
I mean, come on. It's not only is it pathetic in my view, but it's also unnecessarily cruel. Like you actually get to a point where you go, well, this is bullying. Now.
Yes. Yeah.
Like they're not gaining anything.
No.
Out of kicking Hunter Biden around to that extent.
No.
Like some of the bullshit Ramaswamy stuff, you go, okay, I see the political angles here. There's no political angle in this.
No.
That's just being cruel to someone who's down on their luck at this point in time, you know? And yes, he has silver spoon in his mouth, all the rest of it. He's paying for it now.
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jesse Waters have a bit of dignity.
Yeah.
Anyway, enough of that. You got anything else to say about this topic? No. Okay. All right. I am going to get into. I talked about Bannon's contempt of Congress on Planet America.
Yep.
I don't want to go into too much detail on it,
Okay.
but he's going to jail on July the 1st for 4 months for contempt of Congress because he didn't testify to the January 6th committee. I want to get in some slightly different angles and then to reiterate something here, which I think is important to say because I know it's going to be said endlessly in July or going towards July.
Yep.
I want to read what Matt Gaetz took it hard.
Oh,
he took it real hard that Bannon's going to jail. Matt Gaetz said, "It is with great sadness and anger that we observe the death of the judicial system in America." Steve Bannon sought judicial review of the illegal demands of a runaway congressional committee, unlike any ever comprised. It was literally a matter of first impression, and they're sending him to prison, not just to torture him, but to torture us. He didn't even get a real trial. His defenses were stripped by a judge who hates him. The ramifications of these actions will reverberate in a very dark way for a long time. Now, that's certainly a tad more overwrought than his reaction to Hunter Biden's conviction, which was the Hunter Biden gun conviction is kind of dumb, TBH. Two different kinds of reactions there. But I want to remind you that they didn't just zap Bannon and throw him in jail. Right? There was a bit of a history here.
Yes.
Bannon was subpoenaed to testify to the January 6th committee and hand over a bunch of documents by October 2021. For those who don't own calendars, that's 2 years and 8 months ago.
That's right.
But Bannon said that he would not participate out of respect for Trump's executive privilege. Now, That's interesting because Bannon wasn't part of the executive.
No, he wasn't.
He wasn't a member of Trump's advisory staff. He was fired 4 years earlier by Trump. But Bannon didn't stop there. He didn't just refuse to testify about Trump. He refused to testify about anyone or anything.
Yes.
Because of Trump's executive privilege, he wouldn't talk about anyone else.
No.
Which doesn't even make sense. He refused to hand over records and documents which didn't involve Trump. So zero participation from Steve Bannon in the January 6th committee, okay? He refused to do that for 9 more months before he was finally due to go to trial for contempt. 7 days, exactly 7 days before his trial, when the January 6th committee hearings were basically over, Trump then announced he would waive executive privilege. And Bannon then said he'd be happy to testify. Mr. Bannon is willing to and indeed prefers to testify at your public hearing, his lawyer said. His lawyer, Robert Costello. old mate.
Robert Costello, yeah.
Of course, that was when Trump was getting his ass handed to him in the January 6 hearings, and he wanted someone to defend him at the hearings. So that was what that was about. But by then it was too late because, of course, they wanted Bannon to testify behind the scenes with a deposition so they could build the case that they had by then actually presented to the public, so it was too late. He was found in contempt, then sentenced in October 2023, so it took a while for that sentence.
Yeah.
Then that's when he should have gone to jail in October 2023, but he lodged fruitless appeal after fruitless appeal. He had a chance. He had a go here, Matt.
He really did.
Yeah, a real go. He lost all those appeals, and now he's appealing again to the DC Court of Appeals, presumably Supreme Court, because, quote, the government seeks to imprison Mr. Bannon for the 4-month period leading up to the November election when millions of Americans look to him for information on important campaign issues.
Marjorie Taylor Greene would have to find another podcast to go on.
Just imagine. But once again,
we'll have her on, Pep.
Marjorie, open invitation.
Yes.
Kangaroo Bob, I'll tell you when that's coming. You don't have to listen to that one. I know she's a pepper.
Yeah.
Can you imagine anyone less likely to listen to us than Marjorie Taylor Greene? Anyway.
She would be like, I love all dogs except yours, Jazz.
And then she's off. How dare you? Yes. Now, just to reiterate, he's not going to jail for the 4 months leading up to the November election because it's all rigged and there's election interference. And to thwart the Trumpers, it's because he has been pushing his luck.
Yes,
as late as he possibly could.
To be honest, it would probably help Trump to have Bannon in prison for that period.
Probably.
Like, it would probably help Trump to have the whole Heritage Foundation in prison for that period as well.
Well, the way they're going.
yeah. I'm just saying, like, it would potentially help Trump to have Trump in prison for that period too.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll also add that you can tell how much genuine remorse Steve Bannon has for his wrongdoing. By the way, at his press conference last week, he declared that the people who were responsible for his prosecution, his charged prosecution, which are Comey and Andrew McCabe at the FBI, they investigate him, should, quote, get your passport, get the hell out of the country because, hey, we're coming, we will hunt you down. Genuine remorse, I feel. Jesse, do you feel that's enough contrition for you, Jesse? Saying he's going to hunt the two FBI senior officials down? That contrition for you? The question, though, I have for you, Dave.
Yes.
And this is what I answered in brief on Planet America.
Yeah.
A, is this overly political a move to put Bannon in jail? And B, how do we square this with Merrick Garland being cited for contempt yesterday, and presumably he's not going to jail given he's the person who decides whether to prosecute people for contempt?
Look, I won't deny that it's political. It's unavoidably political. I wouldn't say it's overly political for all of the reasons that you've just mentioned.
Yep.
Okay, so the process has been going on for a long time.
Yep.
Just want to remind everyone as well, Bannon should have gone to prison years ago.
Oh, yeah, of course. He was pardoned.
Yes, yeah.
He was found guilty.
He was absolutely found...
Like 4 years?
He was found guilty of scamming Trump supporters.
Yeah.
In fact, Trump wasn't very pleased about that whole thing. But yeah, he was found guilty of scamming Trump supporters. He was very memorably arrested on a boat by the postal cops.
Yes.
Yeah, this was one of the more surreal moments of 2020, seeing him getting handcuffed in his boating gear.
Can you imagine when he's on a boat
Yeah.
out in the sea, how many shirts he'd be wearing? Because he wears 3 shirts at the best of times. Look at a photo of him, guys. He does wear 3 shirts every day. Out in the sea, he'd be wearing 5 or 6 for sure.
Yeah.
In the elements.
This is another example of where due process has not only been followed, it's basically been followed to death.
Yes.
Like they have allowed him to exploit every loophole imaginable to get to this point. He's still got some more to exploit, and he's still going to jail. Yeah.
Yes.
That's fine.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I have to say about this, because I'm going to add a bit more here. Okay, first of all, just for those who don't remember the Merrick Garland thing, he's cited for not handing over recordings of the special counsel interview. He handed over the transcript.
Yep.
But he didn't hand over the recordings.
Yes.
He declared executive privilege. There is a judicial privilege in this case, like we said before.
Yep.
But there is an essential difference between...
A slight difference between him and Bannon?
Yeah, and that he's in the executive.
He's part of the executive.
That's right. Not only is he part of the executive, but he's actually a Senate-confirmed official in the executive.
Yes.
Okay, so that's very executive.
Yes.
Right? Also, he has been cooperating with the subpoena. He handed over the transcript under the subpoena. So he's been cooperating as much as he can.
Yes.
His privilege claim is at least slightly plausible. The justice privilege claim, that makes sense. I mean, James Comer, as we discussed earlier, openly admits in his fundraising emails he only wants those recordings for political purposes.
Yes.
Not for investigative purposes, not for impeaching purposes. It's now, obviously, Garland's not going to prosecute himself for contempt. But I want to tell you another reason he's different.
Yep.
It's the same reason that I don't care so much about Bannon's contempt imprisonment. Even though it's very rare to be imprisoned for contempt of Congress. You can be imprisoned for contempt of court a lot, but Congress is rare. The DOJ don't just prosecute everyone for contempt lately.
No.
They prosecuted Bannon.
Yep.
They prosecuted Navarro for the same thing.
Yep.
6 years ago, they didn't prosecute Bill Barr.
No.
Surprisingly, Bill Barr's DOJ didn't prosecute Bill Barr.
This is okay. Just a little side note.
Yeah.
Interesting criminal law history. Can anyone answer the question? Is there any attorney general anywhere in America at any level who's ever ordered the prosecution of themselves?
I don't know of it. If any Peppers know one, let us know. I've never heard of it. I know. What's his name? Eric Holder was also cited for contempt. He chose not to prosecute himself. Also, Bill Barr's DOJ didn't prosecute Wilbur Ross, another Trump appointee, when he was cited for contempt. But Garland's Department of Justice didn't prosecute a number of people who didn't testify to the January 6th committee. Mark Meadows.
Yes.
Dan Scavino. Neither of them were prosecuted, even though neither of them testified.
No.
Both of them cited executive privilege for why they didn't testify, just like old mate here.
Yes.
Bannon.
Yeah.
But the reason they weren't prosecuted was Bannon and Navarro, number one, weren't acting in their official capacity when they spoke to Trump, whereas Meadows and Scavino were.
Yes.
Meadows was his chief of staff. Scavino was his social media guy. Navarro was a trade rep. He had no business around January 6th at all. Garland is one step even more protected, of course, because he's an actual Senate-confirmed executive branch official. But both Meadows and Scavino participated as much as they could without violating the executive privilege. Like, Meadows handed over a bunch of documents.
Yeah.
Scavino handed over everything else except for they just wouldn't testify about Trump.
Yes.
And so they didn't get prosecuted.
No.
Because they weren't showing contempt.
That's how simple it is.
And Garland also cooperated as much as he could. So it's apples and oranges here. Bannon is a different situation in my view. So let's just quote one Republican who said there was only one Republican who didn't vote for Garland's contempt. It was Dave Joyce, who's an ex-prosecutor. He said, as a former prosecutor, I cannot in good conscience support a resolution that would further politicize our judicial system to score political points. The American people expect Congress to work for them, solve policy problems, and prioritize good governance. Enough is enough. Hear, hear.
Yeah, good, Dave.
And next time mention his shirts, because they are bloody weird. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. I want to talk about congressional expenses briefly.
Okay.
And then let's take it to Alito. Mm-hmm. There's a report in the Washington Post this week about the Congressional Expense Program. It's a new program. Mm-hmm. It was established last year because Congress people are too scared to vote for their own pay raises. So instead of doing that, they tried to sneak a pay raise through the back door with expenses.
Right, yes.
It's supposed to cover the cost of maintaining separate homes in DC and their home districts.
Yep.
Right? And the only rules are these. Lawmakers cannot be repaid for principal or interest on their mortgages. Mm-hmm. They can only get reimbursement for days they're actually working or flying to DC. They can't ask for more back than their actual expenses.
Yep.
And they are strongly encouraged, but not required, to keep records of their expenses. Can you believe that? And not required to keep records.
That's great.
So if you hear that and you think that sounds ripe for abuse, well, strap yourself in. Jack Bergman from Michigan is the program's top spender last year. He was reimbursed for $44,000 in 1 year, $32,000 for accommodation.
Yep.
And because obviously he was staying in a hotel or something, or a motel or whatever. Nearly $12,000 for meals. So that's in 1 year. That's $44K. Number two, you want to guess who?
Nancy.
No, she's coming. She's coming. Oh. Sorry, Matt Gaetz.
Oh.
I should have said dodgier. He billed over $30,000 in lodging expenses and $11,000 for meals. That's $41K for Matt Gaetz. A spokesperson for Matt Gaetz said, in 2023, Rep. Gaetz dedicated significant time to his work on the weaponization subcommittee, requiring his presence to be in Washington, D.C. on days often when there were no votes, which incurred additional reimbursement expenses to conduct depositions.
How much of it went to Nesta?
I don't know. Hope he wasn't eating Nesta. The interesting thing about this is Matt Gaetz is such a hard worker.
Yes.
Like, let's give the man credit.
Oh, incredibly hard worker.
Such a hard worker that no other member of the weaponization committee seemed to be there on those days when he was there. And they didn't require nearly as many days' expense as Matt Gaetz.
Although, to be fair,
he was the Atlas of the weaponization committee, carrying it on his shoulders.
To be fair,
yes.
He is so visibly hated by everyone else in Congress, including members of his own party, that you can imagine them having a rule like, we all work on these days and then Matt works on these days. Maybe.
That does make sense. Like that must be it.
Yeah.
Then there are those, the special people who remember what I said about the fact you're not supposed to claim principal interest in mortgages. You're supposed to claim like hotel expenses and stuff like that, right? There are those who own their own homes in the Washington, D.C., yet still somehow need accommodation expenses.
Wow.
Now, there are plenty of people who own their homes in the Washington, D.C. area who don't claim anything.
Yeah.
Like Patrick McHenry, Ro Khanna, Mike McCall.
Yeah.
Zero claims for accommodation from them.
Yeah.
Then there are those like Nancy Mace.
Ah, yes.
And to be fair, Eric Swalwell.
Oh, okay, yes.
Who do have their own homes, and yet somehow they need accommodation.
Don't want to ride the metro.
Nancy Mace, she co-owns a $1.6 million Capitol Hill townhouse, and she expensed $27K for accommodation in 2023.
That's not only does she have a house in the DC area, it's actually in Capitol Hill.
Yes.
Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah.
You might be going, well, what's she doing in that house? We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Strangely, she expensed for over $3,000 for lodging in January, March, and May. Over $4,000 in October. Swalwell, who had a $1.2 million home in the area, was reimbursed more than $20,000 for lodging, to be fair, in 2023. Here's where it gets interesting. There's been an ethics complaint lodged against Nancy Mace, accusing her of secretly fleecing taxpayers. Two of her former staffers have gone on the record saying that Mace repeatedly directed them to file for reimbursements of $2,000 a month, despite being informed by people involved in her office finances. She couldn't justify claiming that much. During some months of the year, she filed to be reimbursed $3,000, nearly twice what her team had calculated. And the fact that she was claiming anything was dodgy, because here's the key to why she was charging.
Okay.
She was renting out her house on VBRO, which is like a one of those apps.
Yes, yeah.
An online vacation rental place, the Daily Mail found the listing.
Wow.
It lists the property owner as Ruth M. Ruth is Mace's middle name.
Yeah.
So not only was she gouging the system by charging for accommodation so she could make money by renting out her property.
Yeah.
But she was also ripping them off with the gouging by charging more than her own staff said she was allowed to charge.
Not considered a VP candidate.
You're right. She shows all the right stuff.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that's enough on Nancy Mace. Tell us about Alito.
Okay, so the latest Alito madness has been that a journalist went undercover at a paid event. It's one of the few paid events where the public can interact with Supreme Court justices. So it was a dinner. And it was a dinner where wine was served. I think that this is a salient detail.
Yes.
And she was posing as a conservative Christian activist and asking both of the Alitos various questions.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to start by saying I actually think that the quote that has been made the most of, I actually don't see very much in it, which is she was trying to goad certain responses out of the Alitos. And she asked Samuel Alito, do you think that America needs to return to more of a place of godliness? And he said something like, oh, yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, that's been widely reported, like Samuel Alito appears to agree with, returning America to a theocracy, blah, blah, blah. Look, I don't have a huge amount of sympathy for Alito in any context, but at a dinner where the wine has been flowing and he's cornered by what appears to be a crazy person asking him about returning to a place of godliness, and he say, oh, I'd agree with that. To me, that is nothing.
Honestly,
yeah,
I've been there so many times.
Yes,
not to this dinner.
Yeah. Like, who knows what I've agreed to?
Yeah, but being cornered by a loon, someone who seems like a loon.
Yeah.
You just want to indulge them and just get the hell out of there.
Yes,
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah. Now the other big quote that she got out of him was because she asked, "Do you think it's possible to negotiate with the left?"
Yeah.
And he said, one side's got to win. He said, it's possible to live with them maybe, but there are some principles that can't be compromised. Now, I've gone back and forth on this personally about what the relationship of this statement actually is to values pluralism, right? Because on its face, it really does seem to be a kind of rejection of values pluralism. So it's one side's got to win. There are some things that can't be compromised, and you could argue that's that's worrying coming from a judge. The one side's got to win thing, and he's clearly identified with one side. And obviously, part of this story was that Justice Roberts had a very different view. Yes, yeah. No, Justice Roberts gave the perfectly political answer to that. Yeah. On the other hand, though, Alito did say we've got to, they can live together. That is a bigger concession to values pluralism than a lot of people on that side of politics are making at this point. Now, it may seem to be a low bar to say it's good that he's saying we shouldn't be wiping out the other side, that we should actually be living with the other side. But, I mean, once again, it's not what I would want to hear him say, right? Because, first of all, there are no permanent victories in democracies, or there should be no permanent victories in democracies. And the what he seemed to be expressing was it did seem to have the rings of the conservative dream of permanent victory. Like one side's got to win, and we might allow them to exist, but it's going to be on our terms, and that does sound pretty nasty. On the other hand, that's not the only way of reading what he said. Like politics is about wins and losses and winners and losers. It could just be an acknowledgement of that. He might not be talking about the dream of permanent victory. He might be talking about, current political circumstances. There are some principles you don't compromise on. Yeah, most people, if you dug deep enough, would probably say that there are some principles that you don't compromise on. Yeah. So, I mean, as I say, I go back and forth about whether what he's just said is compatible with values pluralism. But anyway, the real revelation of this is exactly how insane Martha Ann Alito is.
Okay.
Now, so I have not heard all of the audio, but I've read about I've read about a lot of the audio.
Sure.
And so for a start, she's fantasizing a lot about flags. She apparently spends a lot of time thinking about flags. In fact, if there's one thing that this incident has conclusively done, it's to get Samuel Alito off the flagpole, so to speak, off the hook about the flags, because listening to this and reading about this, she does seem to be just insanely fixated with flags. She is very upset that a neighbour has raised a pride flag.
Okay.
And she's like, I've got to stare at that pride flag across the lagoon all summer. And she said, I want to raise a Jesus Sacred Heart flag. She then also, in this extended flag fantasy, started talking about she wanted a flag with the Italian word, I think it's pronounced vergogna, on it, which means shame. Ooh. She wants that to be facing the pride flag.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like shame's like the opposite of pride.
Yeah.
But in Italian.
Yes. Yeah.
For some reason.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Now, if you're listening to me recounting this and you're imagining a sane version, a sane person saying this, don't. Apparently, during the course of this conversation, someone named Kat was in the vicinity and she kept meowing at her. Now, look, I'm not above a bit of meowing, but it's usually in response to one of my cats meowing.
Sure.
Like, I don't think I've ever meowed at a human being as a form of salutation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Even someone called Cat.
No, not even someone called Cat.
Yes.
And apparently she's also obsessed with, in 2006, a fashion reporter from the Washington Post wrote a piece. So this 2006, it would have been just after Alito was appointed, taking a dig at her fashion sense. Oh. And she's been telling Samuel Alito, like, one day, like,
throw her in prison.
What? Well, no, not throw her, but she's like, one day I'm going to be free. In other words, one day you won't be a Supreme Court justice anymore.
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm going to go after them. I don't know what she's going to go after them with. Flags, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
In different various languages.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
She is going to go after them.
Wow.
Okay, so what can we take away from all of this? Well, one of the things is, whether we like it or not, it's James O'Keefe's world now.
Yeah.
Like,
I hate this.
This,
I don't like it.
This journalist, she is convinced that Alito was behind the leak of the Dobbs versus Mississippi case.
Lauren Windsor is convinced.
Yeah, she's convinced about that.
Yeah, okay.
I think I had to read through all this material pretty quickly.
Yeah. But
I'm getting the impression this was why she did this, was maybe, I don't know, to try and
catch him.
To try and catch him. I can't, as I say, Alito said some things that I didn't like. His wife said some things that were downright insane. But I just can't give that much credibility to any exercise of going and trying to goad certain responses, actually getting fairly mild ones from Alito himself, getting ultra mild ones from Roberts.
Yeah.
And then going public with it. the morality of her side, it just seems incredibly weak to me as a form of attack.
Yeah, it's not good evidence. I got two concerns about this practice, and I'm glad you brought up James O'Keefe because it's the obvious parallel.
Yes, yeah.
'Cause in fact, it's an identical parallel. Like the James O'Keefe, for those who don't know, James O'Keefe has published a series of stings where, and we don't know exactly how he gets these hidden camera admissions from people, but there's a strong sense that it involves attractive women. At sort of at bars.
Yes, yeah.
when with drunk people who are trying to hit on them and stuff. I really don't like a school of inverted commas journalism that revolves around trying to take advantage of other people's goodwill. Like when other people are being nice to you.
Yes, yeah.
Other people are, you draw out of them admissions which may or may not be true.
Yeah.
Probably aren't true.
Yes.
But it's just you try and be nice to them. You try and give them something because you think they want something. And maybe it's because you want to sleep with them.
Yep.
Maybe it's just because you're a nice person.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe it's
which the Alitos are not.
Sure.
But I mean, she gave them. David Roth in Defector pointed out she gave them the most basic kind of flattery. Yeah, and in return, that turned on the fire hose of Martha and Alito.
But I think anything that takes advantage of people's goodwill, like in that case, even if Alito's not a nice person at that moment, he doesn't have to talk to this rando,
no,
this brain rando.
Yes, yeah.
Like that is him being generous with his time. Okay, and you taking advantage of that to stick him. I don't like that. That's the first thing, and I don't think it proves anything because they're just trying to be nice. The second thing is I don't like the fact that when she was trying out her objective tests of Alito versus Roberts, she worded the questions to them differently.
Yes, yeah.
So that she was stitching up Alito. And I don't think enough people noticed that.
No,
there were some subtle but big differences in the wording of the questions between the two.
Yeah. By the way, because I don't think we've explained this. Roberts' response to she asked Roberts, do you think that America's do you think America's a Christian nation? Or is America a Christian?
Something like that. Yeah.
Is America a Christian nation? Yeah. Very different from do you think we should return to a place of godliness? Yeah. Right, which is all kinds of people could agree with that without being Christian nationalists. She was actually setting Roberts up to give the perfectly politic response which he gave, which was basically a tribute to religious pluralism in America. Yeah.
The other thing I don't like about this kind of thing is that it's, I mean, okay, I was about to say this is one of the few avenues for a Supreme Court justice to meet and talk to a normal person.
Yes,
no one who appears at this function is normal.
No.
But relatively normal compared to their circles.
Yes,
it's not Harlan Crow.
Yeah.
It's someone who spent $500.
Yes.
Not someone who spent $1 million.
Yes, yeah.
Right. So this is the closest thing that you can get to an event where a rando can talk to a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
And that's nice. And now it's going to end.
Yes.
It's going to end because of Lauren Windsor. If the event is ever held again, the justices are going to be way more careful who they speak to. And they're only going to talk to people they recognise.
Yes.
The rando who comes up to them is going to be shit out of luck.
That's right.
It's like,
Lauren,
thanks, Lauren.
You've betrayed all randos. The other thing that was seized on was the fact that Alito was complaining about it's the media's fault that public trust in the Supreme Court has fallen. Needless to say, this is not the first time he has said this. This is one of his favourite talking points. Yeah, he says this publicly all the time. So it's not like there's been, some major scoop attained there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the one thing which I got out of this, and you referred to the moment, I'm trying to find the quote, I can't find the quote off the top of my head, but you referred to it vaguely, was when Martha Ann was talking about getting revenge on people.
Yes,
and saying, actually, it wasn't about that, it was about the flag.
Yeah.
They were talking about flags. And at one point in time, she said something like, she was describing her conversation with Sam, and she goes, when you retire, like as soon as you retire, I'm going to be doing X. I think the phrase was as soon as you retire.
Yes, yeah.
It suggested retirement is coming soon.
Ah, okay, right.
When I heard that, I thought there's an implication here.
Yeah.
If Trump wins the election,
yes,
Alito's retiring.
Yeah.
He ain't going to go till he drops.
No.
So that really hammers home, for those who care about this kind of thing, that hammers home the stakes of the election.
Yes.
Because when Alito gets replaced by a 15-year-old, however young they are, and especially if Thomas does as well, then that's the Supreme Court is in place then for 20 years.
Yes.
So it's it's worth noting, I think.
And I think I'll just say in closing,
yes,
given everything that Alito has said, done, and most importantly, decided publicly, we don't need any of this.
Fair.
Like, none of this condemns Alito more than
his rulings.
His nearly 20 years as a Supreme Court justice. Yeah.
I agree. While we're talking about judges, we're going to be moving into canon fodder soon.
Canon fodder.
And
nice.
So I'm just going to just drop in just a little judge thought, then do a stats nugget, and then you can head over to canon land.
Yes.
Fix the Court has identified 103 definite gifts that Clarence Thomas received between 2004 and 2024, totaling a value of $2.4 million.
Yeah.
There are also, on top of that, 101 likely gifts received during the same period, totaling $1.78 million. So if you add them together, that's $4.19 million over 20 years. Now, a number of those gifts have not appeared on his disclosure forms. Do you want to guess how many? I just talked about, 200 and 204 gifts.
Yep.
How many of them do you think appeared on his disclosure forms?
40.
27.
Wow.
You weren't cynical enough, though.
No, I wasn't.
And look, admittedly, a number of gifts might not meet the threshold.
No.
Because there's a minimum threshold. But you know what? When there's 200 gifts worth $4 million, I think a number of them probably would have met the threshold.
Yes.
Which is a few $100.
Yep.
Okay. Although, I should say, to be fair to Thomas, after this report came out, he declared a few more.
Yes. Yeah.
Belatedly. Now, you might think, well, this is a partisan group being partisan.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it is, because it really does seem to be completely about Clarence Thomas, not about anyone else. This is a graph I'm putting up now of Thomas's value of gifts per year compared to the other justices. Dave, I want to show you. That is what it looks like. It's a significant difference.
Wow.
Between Justice Thomas, who's on $200,000 per year, and the other justices who are significant. Those numbers you're seeing there are thousands of dollars.
That, by the way, is an example of good graphic presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, choosing your graph carefully is important. Choose which form of graph, and they've nailed that one. Although, to be fair, probably any graph probably would have got the basic message across.
I'm taking that compliment on behalf of Kevin Drum. That's a Kevin Drum graph.
Good work, Kevin.
He's very good at this, Kevin. Okay, so that graph is interesting.
Yep.
But also, in terms of the percentage of gifts declared, like I told you that he hadn't declared many. Kavanaugh, Barrett, Kagan, Gorsuch, and Roberts. There's no need to worry about their percentage of gifts declared. They've basically received no gifts. They're going at like one a year or less. I don't feel sorry for them. It's just they're not corrupt. You're feeling sorry for them not being corrupt?
And also, not even Santa's bringing them anything.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's their one gift a year.
Yeah.
They're going
declaring that lump of coal again.
Now, Alito has declared 6 of 16 gifts at 37.5%.
Okay.
Sotomayor has declared 38 of 47 gifts at 82.6%. And then we got Thomas declaring 8.5% of his gifts over his career. So we got a Thomas problem here. That's what we got. Interesting, though. If you want to end gifts entirely, which I personally do. Now, we know about Alito.
Yep.
He's had a few as well.
Yep.
He hasn't had so many, but they've been worth a lot.
Yes.
Sotomayor is the opposite. She's received plenty of gifts, but they haven't been as valuable.
Right.
Alito received 16 gifts worth $170,000. Sotomayor received 46 gifts worth $15,000 over her career. So that's a lot less than, for both of them, it's a lot less than $4 million,
Yes.
which is Clarence Thomas.
Yep.
But Sotomayor's, her Santa Claus bag includes $3,700 tickets to Beyonce. Now, in my view, she shouldn't have taken those tickets. No, not that there's anything on either Thomas or Alito, especially Thomas.
Yeah.
But let's just acknowledge that as I go in passing, that I don't think she should have accepted that.
Yep.
But amusingly, given the information I've just told you,
Yes.
this is how Fox News responded to this report.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is acknowledging previously unreported trips that were paid for by a conservative billionaire. Thomas has amended last year's financial disclosure form to include the trips that were back in 2019. The vacations to Bali and California were not originally included in his 2019 disclosure form. By the way, last year, Sandra, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the justice, got 4 tickets from Beyonce for a concert worth $3,700.
There you go.
Obviously, I made a mistake there. It wasn't Sotomayor who got the $3,700 tickets. It was Ketanji Brown Jackson. She still shouldn't accept it. I think that's pretty much her own gift. Her only gift. Well, good start, though. Anyway, my point is this. The headline, and just to be clear, this was when the report came out. The headline was, Clarence Thomas amends his disclosure form. That's the headline. And the sub lead is, and by the way, Ketanji Brown Jackson got $3,700 tickets to Beyonce. Interesting reportage.
Yes. Very interesting. By the way, I love the thought of Clarence Thomas being in Bali at the same time as some end of season trips by some Australian football teams.
Oh, just imagine.
Imagine the times.
Great times.
Yeah.
Don't take your shoes off, Clarence. Stats Nugget. Woo! IVF is in the news. IVF is in Congress. There's rights to IVF, all that kind of stuff, all these kinds of bills. Saw an interesting article about this a little while ago. Sex selection in IVF is banned in almost every other country. It's big business in the United States. Genetic tests paired with IVF enable, obviously, prospective parents to identify and implant either male or female embryos of their choice. Illegal in Canada, illegal in Australia, illegal in every European nation except for Cyprus. I don't know what's going on with Cyprus. But in 2018, take a guess what percentage of American clinics offer sex selection for non-medical reasons.
6%.
75%.
Wow, okay.
So it's pretty big business in America. That's 2018, so I can only imagine now.
Jesus.
All right. Jeffrey Steinberg, a pioneer of the procedure who practices in California, estimates the trait selection comprises 5 to 10% of the American IVF market, up to $90 million annually. Now, polygenic tests, which sequence embryos' genomes and promise parents the ability to select those at the lowest risk for obesity, bipolar disorder, and other conditions, they have been attacked, yet they are completely unregulated and legal. And this is apparently becoming a thing. It's not just sex selection, it's trait selection. It's Gattaca.
Yes.
Like it's the stuff that was in science fiction 20 years ago. I thought you were going to come up
with a stat about what percentage are actually chosen, male and female. Do we have those numbers?
I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
No, but I can look for them. Most other industrialized nations provide subsidies or they mandate insurance coverage of IVF, which gives them a strong incentive to regulate the industry.
Yes.
But, and that might happen in America, like 21 states now require insurance to cover some infertility treatments. But that's uneven assistance. Arkansas, one of the few states to explicitly mandate IVF coverage, restricts that mandate to heterosexual married couples, for instance, right? But since there is no insurance regulation nationally, there's no regulation because most countries regulate through the insurance,
Yes.
right? And it's strange because America has a model for regulation right there, which is the military. 8 military hospitals provide IVF at about a quarter of the average cost because of their regulations.
Yeah.
And they have strict security protocols as well.
Yes.
But there is no regulation at this point in time of any kind.
Yes. Yeah.
Safety regulations,
Yes.
standard regulations,
Yeah.
or as we've seen, Gattaca regulations in America whatsoever. It's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
Which I found really interesting.
Yeah.
So there you go. Tell me about, let's go to cannon fodder.
Okay.
Yes, go.
Yes. So Aileen Cannon, first of all, what I want to know is why are there only 2 photos of her in existence?
It's true. It's true.
Seriously.
Do
a Google image search. There are only 2. So there's the...
I've seen articles where they use the same photo twice.
So there's the classic sort of class photo one of her as a judge.
Yes.
And then there's the Zoom screenshot with the blurred lower left-hand corner, which just drives me insane every time I see it.
Yes.
It's always one of those. Any story about Aileen Cannon. Now, I understand that, you know, judges are not the most photographed figures apart from Supreme Court justices. Like Mershon, we only ever really see one photo of Mershon, albeit it's a very flattering photo.
It's a wonderful photo.
Of Mershon. But still, high-profile federal judge. Like, there are more photos online available of Billy Cool, the genius behind Willy's Chocolate Experience, than there are of Aileen Cannon. And that, I don't know, seems unbalanced somehow.
It's fair to me. Yeah, I'll pay that.
Anyway, but, okay, more substantively, she's finding more reasons to delay the Florida documents case.
Yes.
And possibly working her way up in the queue of justices who could replace Samuel Alito in the Supreme Court. Now, the latest one was actually prompted by Clarence Thomas back in April when Trump's lawyers were, asking the Supreme Court about immunity.
Yes.
Clarence Thomas asked Trump's lawyers if they had challenged or if they'd thought about challenging the constitutionality of the special counsel, of Jack Smith being appointed special counsel. So Thomas is the one who actually suggested this to Trump's lawyer. But, of course, he's not the first person to put the suggestion out there, as we're going to see.
Oh, no, he's not.
This goes back a long way. Okay. But in terms of the genesis of this idea, as it has happened, this comes from Clarence Thomas. So Trump's lawyers it's not that there are 3 amicus briefs, including one by the original complainant about this going back to the 80s, that Aileen Cannon has allowed these to be considered. So these are briefs that are challenging the constitutionality of special counsel.
We should say,
Judge
Chafkin has just summarily dismissed any suggestions of this.
Not the first time that this has come up as a legal issue.
Yes.
When Roger Stone was sentenced to prison and was trying every avenue of appeal possible, one of them was appealing the constitutionality of Robert Mueller as a special counsel. That got around 3-0 rejection by the DC Appeals Court, one of whom was a Trump appointee.
Yeah.
And the reason for this is, so the claim, the very spurious claim about the unconstitutionality of it, although worryingly, if you Google special counsel and constitutional, everything that comes up is pseudo intellectual discourse about why it's definitely unconstitutional.
Okay.
A lot of it from Heritage and a lot of it from Stephen Calabresi, who we'll get to in a second.
God.
Okay, so the argument always is that the special counsel is there's a couple of arguments. One is that they're a principal officer, and that they're accountable to no one, essentially. The other is that they're a private citizen and that they're accountable to no one. But either way that you look at it, the argument is that they, because of the fact that the special counsel is independent from the Attorney General, that supposedly they're not accountable to the Attorney General, therefore they should have to be confirmed by the Senate.
I hate to put a spoiler there, but they can be fired by the Attorney General.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is what the DC Court of Appeals said. They're independent of the Attorney General, but they can be fired by the Attorney General. Therefore, they are effectively serving at the pleasure of an executive officer. Therefore, they are an inferior officer.
Yes.
Okay, that was the finding. They're an inferior officer. Jack Smith has mentioned this many times. Okay, so they're an inferior officer. And this is what I hate about this is it's a willful distortion of the difference between being independent of the Attorney General and, the idea that you're just some kind of rogue.
Yeah.
The whole idea of independence from the Attorney General is so that the Attorney General, a presidential appointee, is not actually, exercising political influence over these investigations.
Yeah, that's the reason they exist.
This should be something Republicans should be happy about, right?
Otherwise, they'd be a U.S. attorney.
Yes. Yeah. So, the whole thing about the independence of the special counsel is to protect them from political interference. But yes, they can be fired by the Attorney General, which is the very straightforward reason why real judges, actual judges, not Federalist Society bozos or Aileen Cannon, decided very, very quickly that this, there were no legs to this. By the way, the first person ever to complain about this, I told you I mentioned him again, was Edwin Mace.
Oh, okay.
This is Ronald Reagan's.
Yeah.
What officer was he?
Was he Attorney General?
I think he was the Attorney General.
I think he was the Attorney General.
He was either the Attorney General or someone very high up.
I think he was the Attorney General.
Yeah.
I'll just confirm it. But I think he
anyway,
was.
Ronald Reagan's Attorney General during Iran-Contra. For reasons that are pretty obvious, he does not like special counsels. And ever since then, there's been this strand in the Republican Party who have hated special counsels. They've hated basically anything that impinges on the power of the executive. And when you sort of peel all this away, it's a very kind of anti any restraint on executive power ideology, which is one of the direct through lines from Reagan to Trump.
Attorney General.
He was Attorney General. Okay. So Edwin Meese is one of the people, he's still around. He's one of the people presenting an amicus brief.
Oh, God.
Okay. But let's talk about Stephen Calibresi.
Let's.
What a journey Stephen Calibresi has been on. Now, a lot of you probably first heard his name on PEP. This is a bit over a year ago when we were talking about this odd phenomenon of a Federalist Society president saying that Trump shouldn't be on the ballot because he's committed an insurrection.
It was his idea.
It was his idea.
He's the one who pushed it.
Now, as much as I didn't want Trump to ever run for president again, we thought that was an extreme position.
Yes, we did.
If Congress didn't impeach him, then, there's fuck all you can do about it, really. So he's gone from that. And even at the time, he kind of went back and forth, but he stuck with that for a long time.
Until, you know what changed his mind?
What?
The McCasey op-ed I read out on PEP.
Yeah.
He was so moved by that op-ed
that
he just said, okay, I've changed my position completely. Now, I also was moved by that op-ed, if you recall, but the difference is I'm a schmo. I'm not supposed to be the preeminent legal thinker in the country.
Yes,
which is what he claims to be.
Yeah.
And he went from being the number one advocate of one position to just the opposite position, just from reading a single op-ed.
Yes, yeah.
Incredible.
Yes. No, it's absolutely amazing. So he admittedly has been consistent on this special counsel point because he opposed Mueller.
Yeah.
He said that Mueller's appointment as special counsel was unlawful.
Yeah.
So in October 2023, he wrote a piece saying, Jack Smith is also unlawful as a special counsel. But he's been writing a few interesting things since then. There was the piece in the world's most reasonable magazine, Reason, in April this year entitled Aileen Cannon is a Heroine. which may be one of the reasons why she's now listening to his bullshit. There was also the piece that he published in the last week.
Yes.
Did you see? This is on Volok Conspiracy.
Yes, I saw it.
Saying that the election was stolen from Trump.
Yes.
And that he and other Republicans had, up until this point, had been holding their tongues about it because they thought that it was so much more important for the continuation of democracy to because they didn't agree with the January 6th riot, that they thought it was more important to accept Biden's victory. But now he's claiming, no, it was definitely stolen.
Yeah.
And there were two versions of this piece.
Yes.
Okay, so in the first he said he just can't believe the fact that Donald Trump managed to top Obama's 2008 vote total in Pennsylvania, and yet Biden still beat him in Pennsylvania. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
How is it? He said, there's no way in a fair election that Biden could have got 160,000 more votes than Obama, despite the fact that you have things like the population of Pennsylvania has increased by 300,000, or turnout was higher.
And he's up against Trump.
In 2020, in 2020 than it was in 2008. Yeah, or he was up against Trump.
Yeah.
But just those things aside, it's like there's no way that a fair election could have done that. Now, in the second, someone must have had a word with him about this, because then there was a few disclaimers saying, I'm not saying there was any fraud in the vote counting or in the voting itself. That is not, the article didn't originally contain that disclaimer.
No.
The original article was heavily suggestive of the whole vote fraud narrative. No, but instead he's saying, no, what the expansion of mail-in voting and Dropbox centers, he said this has destroyed the secret ballot.
Yeah.
Because what happens? Okay, and by the way, you know how usually when you read an online blog post, when people make factual claims, they link to things?
Yeah.
No linking to anything here. No linking to anything. What he claims is
no links.
These activists would come around to people's houses with ballots and then kind of stand over them while they fill them out to make sure that they fill it out properly.
Yeah.
I just love the idea of there are all these hapless Pennsylvanians quaking in fear in their houses as the Biden goon squad comes around and forces them to to fill out these votes. Yes. As I no linking to anything here.
Nope.
Yeah. So he's saying that and the expansion of mail-in voting, he said, was that there's no excuse for it. Like, it happened in COVID, there was no excuse for it. It did not happen in COVID. Pennsylvania's expansion of mail-in voting happened in 2019. And it happened with Republican support. And this is one of the things that often gets forgotten about the expansion of mail-in voting. Yes, a lot of it did happen during COVID, but even in the states where it happened during COVID, it was usually with Republican support. It was often led by Republican legislators. Yes. So anyway, that's the point where Calibresi is in his odyssey now. He's gone from making sort of proposing remedies to Trump that are so extreme that even those of us who would like to see Trump launched into space think they're too extreme. He's gone from that to...
And saying that he could never vote for Trump again because of January 6th.
Yeah.
To then saying the election was stolen.
Gone from that to election was stolen.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, what an incredible odyssey this man has been through. But it's his bullshit theory that is now helping Cannon to delay the case even more.
Honestly, like, I don't even know why I'm saying this, because this is going to mean nothing to you guys.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this to Dave.
Yes.
Because he knows.
Yeah.
I've been on this journey for quite some time.
Yes, yeah.
I've been sharing these Steve Calabresi articles with Dave for
Yes.
quite a while, and usually they're accompanied with a caption saying, "This guy is absolutely insane."
Yes, yeah.
Like, I genuinely think he has mental problems. Like, he flits around in such an extreme way. And like, it's not...
He should be barking at Martha and Alito.
He should be. it's not just that he changes positions, but
Yeah.
but all the language is so extreme
It is,
on
yes.
both sides.
Yeah.
He goes from being the truest believer on one side to the truest believer on the other side, just in a matter of days.
Yeah.
It's just weird. And like, if you look at the comments on the on Reason, I like Reason. Like you'll be surprised to hear. And so one thing that's great about Reason is the commenters are real smart asses. Like they absolutely give it to him in every one of his columns.
Yeah.
Like he's earned himself so many haters at Reason. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the reason he changed his mind on that stolen
Maybe
line.
he's a comment masochist.
Maybe he is. I don't know.
Maybe this is the only way he can feel anything anymore.
Maybe. But no, he's a weird cat. And the fact fact that he is presenting the case to Aileen Cannon that's not a good sign for that particular case.
Not a good sign.
No,
Yeah.
in fact, what they should do is they should get him to present both sides. Just separate it by day, and then he'll present the other side of his own accord. Anyway, that's an interesting one. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk about immigration, about the executive order.
Okay.
Okay, I was going to talk about this last week, but I'm glad I didn't because there's been a little update.
Okay.
All right, this is immigration, obviously a big issue for 2024. CBS at the polls, 62% of registered voters support a new national program to deport all illegal immigrants.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
That's a big number. Now, not every poll is that extreme.
No.
But the fact that some polls are,
Yeah.
that's a big number.
When we talk about illegal immigrants, we're talking about 11 million people.
We are.
In the United States, and most of whom are not from the recent surge.
No.
Most of whom, 90% of whom have been in the US for years.
If you care about this issue, I think I called something like border farce or something.
Yeah.
It was like PEP 1 something or other.
Yes.
Go back on, I spoke about it for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I spoke thoroughly about it. I
Yes.
think Dave will agree.
Yes, you did.
I'm not going to be doing it
No
this
one
time.
faults your thoroughness.
So, anyway, so immigration, big issue. In May 2024, according to CNN, 18% put immigration as their number one issue in this election. Okay, and Biden's behind Trump on approval on immigration by 27 points.
Yep.
So that's significant.
Yep.
By the way, in 2020, Biden edged Trump out by 1 point on who was best to tackle the border crisis, according to CNN.
Yeah.
Even foreign-born Americans prefer Trump to Biden on immigration at the moment, 47 to 44. Okay, so, interestingly, there's quite a few polls involving Latinos and how Latinos are, there's one in Ipsos, about 40% of Latinos agreeing with a border wall and deporting all undocumented migrants. Nearly 2/3 of Latinos favoring giving the president the authority to shut down the border. Stuff like that. That does not surprise me because that's something I've been saying for a while, that you can expect Latinos to increasingly become more like white people because they are.
Yes.
They are the children and now the grandchildren of immigrants. They themselves not immigrants necessarily. This is a great stat. It's almost a stat nugget. In Los Angeles County, the biggest county, 55% of new Latino voters were foreign-born in 2002. In 2022, 20 years later, fewer than 9% of new Latino voters were foreign-born. So there we go. Okay, so given that situation, what's Biden done about this? Well, first there was legislation, and back in February, it was connected to Ukraine and Israel. That's what we went through on the border farce. PEP, bipartisan legislation it was, and especially spearheaded by Chris Murphy and a guy called Adam Lankford, who was a well-meaning Republican trying to work on bipartisan immigration legislation, and they really took advantage of him.
Yeah.
He was sincere, and he got destroyed as a result.
Yeah.
Then that got blocked by other Republicans. They didn't even get a vote. Trump made noises about, no, let's not do this, and it didn't even get a vote. And there was a lot of bad faith bullshit about that, especially from Mike Johnson. I was disappointed in Mike Johnson. I wasn't surprised, but I was just going, mate, screw you. Anyway, Then nothing for a while. Then the Senate Democrats brought it back, like as a zombie form of it, as a standalone bill. Really bad faith. No attempt to actually pass this bill. It was just to stick them, just to stick Republicans, so Biden could say, "Oh, look what I'm trying to do," and Republicans aren't letting me do it. That went down to a 43-57 vote. Even Adam Langford didn't vote for it this time.
Yeah.
He said it was a non-serious attempt, and he was right. Quote from Adam Langford: "This is trying to poke Republicans in the eye rather than try to solve the problem." There's been no legwork. There's been no attempt to try to bring people back together again to try to figure out how we resolve this. No disdain for Chris Murphy, but there's not been outreach to try to get something and say, we couldn't get the last one through. How do we actually get the next one through? There's been no interchange like that. This is not trying to accomplish anything. It's about messaging. This is trying to hurt Republicans. As if to prove Langford right, as soon as that vote was taken, Joe Biden said, Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican allies don't care about securing the border or fixing America's broken immigration system. If they did, they would have supported the toughest border enforcement in history. Instead, they put partisan politics ahead of our national security. Also, by the way, Langford made a great point, wondering why the Democrats, if they wanted to pass this bill, why they put the bill to vote like 2 days before Memorial Day, when Americans aren't likely to be paying attention to what the Senate is doing, and the Senate aren't going to do anything because they want to go home. Good point, Adam Langford. It's like they want as little public debate as possible. Anyway, Schumer said, though, there was no political calculation behind the vote, of course. Right, yeah, okay. So I thought that was all pretty unedifying.
Yeah.
I obviously am very much on Adam Langford's side of this. But then Biden decided to pass an executive action order, an executive order that would take care of the problem itself. This was last week.
Yes.
This is a bit weird because he'd spent the last 3 years saying he couldn't act alone, and now he was acting alone. Okay, what does it say? This is what it says. It basically separates the situation from either being in a triggered state or not being in a triggered state. There's a trigger, right?
Yeah.
The triggered state is, well, I mean, what is a triggered state? I'm obviously in a triggered state every time I talk about immigration, but other than me, the country's in a triggered state when encounters hit 2,500 per day over a 7-day period.
Right.
That's a triggered state. And it stays that way till it gets below 1,500 a day for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. Now, just to be clear, it hasn't been below 1,500 a day since COVID.
Right.
So that doesn't happen very often. I'll show you a graph of what I'm talking about. That's 1,500 a day. And you can see just how much the Biden era has been over 1,500 a day.
Yes, yep.
So even in the Trump era, there was heaps of times when it was above 1,500 a day. Okay.
Yes,
So
yep.
that is not going to happen very often, 1,500 a day.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, that makes sense, the 1,500 a day, because that's basically what the system is built to handle.
Yep.
Right now, it's about 3,700 a day, generally, for the last few months. And that's a relatively low period for Biden. It was 8,000 a day back in December.
Yeah.
All right. What happens in the triggered state? Most people intercepted on the triggered state will be presumed ineligible and turned away. No asylum. I don't care what your situation is. Sorry, no asylum. That's the Joe Biden executive order.
Yeah.
Okay? But there are a few exceptions. There's an exception for severe trafficking victims. There's an exception for those facing an acute medical emergency or the imminent and extreme threat of rape, kidnapping, torture, or murder. Those exceptions are there for everyone, for everything. Even under Trump, those exceptions were there. So forget them. That's the law. There was an exception for unaccompanied minors. At this point in time, my ears pricked up because we've been here before.
Right.
Soon as you make an exception for unaccompanied minors, you get 1 trillion unaccompanied minors. This is what you call a responsive system. Whatever you set up, there will be a response.
Yes, yeah.
And so if you set up that the only way you get in is with kids, there's going to be a lot of kids. There was another exception as well, which might make this whole executive order bullshit. It's hard to know. You can get protection as an exception in a triggered state if you can demonstrate a reasonable probability of persecution or torture. That, they say, is a new substantially higher standard from what used to be, which is a reasonable possibility of persecution or torture. Now, I've got no idea the difference between possibility and probability. They seem to think it's a huge difference, but they invented it. They just invented it out of thin air. So if they're telling the truth, maybe probability, a reasonable probability excludes everyone. Maybe it excludes no one. And they're full of shit. We don't know.
Break this down. And in the actual International Refugee Convention, it's fear, isn't it? That's the term that's used.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I mean, but the how you assess that fear.
Yeah.
What your chances are is obviously.
So I mean, this possibility probability language. So possibility is any probability over zero.
Yeah. But a reasonable possibility.
When you say reasonable possibility, that's the reasonable possibility that there's a probability over zero.
So,
whereas when you're talking about probability, that means what? Do we need 50% probability?
I don't know.
0.5?
Maybe.
Do we need 60% probability? Where are they going to?
I don't know.
It does seem to. It does seem to be a huge difference because reasonable possibility is. That seems to be, if I go back, is there a possibility that this will happen? If that's non-zero, that's reasonable possibility. Yeah. Whereas reasonable probability seems more like, if there's a 10% chance, we're prepared to live with that.
Yeah. Look, I don't.
You may not be, but we are.
I don't know. All I know is that this is the world of immigration law. It's full of these really vague terms, and it's all in the interpretation.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is potentially an important theoretical change, potentially. They also say if you claim to have a credible fear and you don't pass their new high standard test, this is new. Not only do you get deported in a matter of hours, they say, but you're barred from the country for 5 years, they say. Now, that's new. That could have an impact.
Yeah.
Because under Title 42, which is where they blocked off the country for COVID, people weren't barred.
No.
They weren't allowed in, but then they weren't barred afterwards. So they just kept on trying. They were just bouncing in, bouncing out. A lot of those numbers, which you hear about Joe Biden during the COVID era, are bullshit numbers because they're people coming 10 times.
Yes.
They just try again and again and again and again, right? But now, if they indeed deport people in a matter of hours and then bar them for 5 years, they're not coming back.
No.
So that could actually change things.
Yes.
Potentially. It also could dissuade people from coming.
Yeah.
But I said this was a theoretical change. Why theoretical? I'm not sure that's real. How are you deporting people in hours when you already don't have nearly enough resources to deport criminals? When I say criminals, I don't mean illegal immigrants breaking the law. I mean like rapists and like they've got illegal immigrants in America who have committed other crimes, serious crimes, who they can't deport because they don't have the resources to deport them. So if they're in that situation, how they suddenly got all these resources to deport newcomers in hours? I don't believe them.
No.
I don't believe them. Last week, there was in the news, they had the news, I'm not sure you heard this, 350,000 asylum seekers in the court process since in the last 2 years have just dropped out of the application. They've just closed their applications for asylum.
Wow.
Not said you've got asylum, just said, you know what, stop applying. Just drop out. Not, we're going to deport you.
Yeah.
Just, you've been in the queue for however long. Screw it.
Yeah.
Just don't worry about it. Just hang around. You've got no rights. You're not a citizen. You don't have a green card. You're not legally here, but we're not going to deport you either.
Wow.
And you have no way of attaining asylum status. Even if you genuinely, let's say you are person A, like your archetype A of being abused and you got cigarette burns all up and down your arm. It doesn't matter. You have no means of getting asylum.
No.
350,000 people, they told us, drop out of the queue. Why? Because they don't have enough resources.
Yeah.
And now suddenly they have the resources to, with no extra funding, because this is an executive order which has no funding.
Yeah.
I don't believe them. All right. So this is their order, right? They're always deporting as many people as they can. How can they deport more people now? Anyway. Over the past year, by the way, the DHS has removed and returned more than 750,000 people, more than in every fiscal year since 2010, including under Trump. Okay, they are trying to get us ready. You can't ramp that up. It's ramped up already. Anyway, okay, so they can't deport people in hours. They can't just send them back to Mexico because Mexico is already taking as many as it's agreed to. I mean, maybe they can get away with it for a little while because Mexico's just got a new president.
Yes.
But, and then, so maybe they can, while the president's getting their act together, they can take advantage of that, maybe. But Mexico's only agreed to take back 30,000 people a month from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, and the Mexicans. They're the only ones that Mexico's agreed to take.
Wow.
Okay. There is an exception as well. There is an app, which we talked about the last time we talked about this, a CBP1 app, that's still there. So even in the triggered state, they're taking 45,000 applications per month from the app.
Right.
So that keeps on going. And it's not under the new higher standard. It's the old standard. Okay, so that is just normal.
Yeah.
The app, 45,000. There's also 30,000 people they're taking on parole from Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Haiti. So that's 75,000 people, whatever happens, are coming in every single month. All right, and I don't have a problem with any of that. That's orderly state. Or that's cool. Republicans have a problem with that.
Yeah.
But that's there. Okay, so that's there as well. The problem, though, is if you can't deport them and Mexico won't take them, then you have the Title 42 problem again.
Yes.
You've pulled up the drawbridge, they're just going to come back and they'll try and sneak over.
Yeah.
All right? If you stop people coming legally and there's a reason for them to come, they will come illegally, for sure. They're the gotaways we talked about last time, right? Have a look at the graph, if you don't remember, the graph of how many gotaways there were during Title 42. See that orange line, guys? See how the gotaways go through the roof during Title 42? It's because they couldn't get in legally, so they all came in illegally.
Yes.
Lots of gotaways. And look at the blue line afterwards, how it goes straight back down again. As soon as they can come in legally, they do. There's no gotaways. Okay, so that's what I'm expecting, right? Okay, how is Biden managing to do this? He keeps saying his hands were tied. Remember, this was Biden 4 months ago, and I wish I could just kill the person who invented the helicopter.
With executive authority, or is there more you could do? Absent legislation?
Not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work right.
I curse the day they invented helicopters. But anyway, he's saying, I've done all I can do. Give me the powers. And now he's done this. How is he doing it? His authority he's using is section 212F of the Immigration and Nationality Act. It says, whenever the president finds that the entry of any aliens or any class of aliens into the United States will be detrimental to the interests of the United States, he may by proclamation and for such period as he shall deem necessary suspend the entry of all aliens or any class of aliens as immigrants or non-immigrants or impose on the entry of any aliens any restrictions he may deem to be appropriate. That is the Trump regulation. That's what Trump used in 2019. And you know what happened when Trump used it? It was found to be an illegal use of that particular provision. That's my hurry up.
Okay.
The Refugee Act from 1980 says that any alien who is physically present in the United States or who arrives in the United States, whether or not at a designated port of arrival, and including an alien who is brought to the United States after having been interdicted in international United States waters, irrespective of such alien status, may apply for asylum. That's clearly breaking the Refugee Act.
Yes.
Right? And so the court stopped Trump. The ACLU says they're going to sue Biden now. So we'll see about that.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mike Johnson was saying that Biden should use that provision for the last 6 months.
Yes.
So it's really bad faith for Biden to just turn around and use it after saying for 6 months I can't use it.
Yeah.
Right? Why? So why is he using it now? Why couldn't he use this 2 years ago if that's what he's doing now? I think we all know the reason why.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway. The cynics are saying that Biden is doing this on purpose because he wants it to be blocked by the courts. So he can act all tough and the courts will then block him.
Yeah.
So it's just business as usual. And that CBS poll I told you before.
Yeah.
70% approval of this exec order.
Yeah.
So they include 71% of independents.
And then he will turn around again and say, see, this is why I said I need Congress to do it.
Probably.
But Republicans wouldn't do it. But
Probably.
yeah.
So what does Trump have to say about all this? You'd think he'd be happy given this is kind of going towards his policy, is what he says.
The truth is that Joe Biden's executive order won't stop the invasion. It's weak and it's pathetic. It will actually make the invasion worse.
He says it's making everything worse. Pretty clear Biden isn't going to get much love from him. You know I have to play. You know I have to. Just for Kangaroo Bob, I have to play Marjorie Taylor Greene's reaction.
We should be doing right now, today, we should be voting to impeach Joe Biden because of the invasion in the United States. Oh, but no, none of that is happening up here in Washington, D.C., because Republicans continually have their head up their ass and can't figure out how to actually use the power that the people gave us.
How can I not play that? How can I not play that? Of course I've got to play that. Come on, Kangaroo Bob. Give me a break. I've got to play that. Head up there. They got their head up their ass. All right. Now, to me, the people who should be most annoyed about this, and not any of those people.
It's asylum seekers.
Well, yeah. No, that's true. You're right.
Yes.
You're right. That's a fair call. I was about to say Adam Langford. Because Adam Langford, remember, anyone who negotiated in good faith with the Senate immigration bill, like, because this here is way harsher than that bill. Yeah. Even on the headline level, if they'd said, well, let's have a 2,500 person cap instead of a 5,000 person cap, which that bill did, they might have got it up.
Yeah.
Like, they could at least flagged the negotiation, you know, like they've stuck in this potential tightening of the standard as well, the probability.
Yes.
These are things that they could have used to negotiate, especially the second time around. Remember, Langford said they've given us nothing. They've given us nothing to work with.
Yeah.
If Biden a week later was going to introduce this, why didn't he try and introduce it into the new bill?
Yeah.
So they could actually potentially pass something. You know, it's almost like he didn't want to do anything. And now he still has the nerve to criticize Republicans for not coming to the table on that legislation, which he gave them nothing for. Anyway, okay, so that was what I was going to say last week.
Okay.
I have a quick update.
Okay.
Because they all seemed very cynical to me.
Yeah.
A week later, what have we learnt? We've learnt we weren't cynical enough. That's what we've learnt. Because there are a few exceptions I missed when I went through that legislation, that executive order, like the exception of an exception for those who are allowed to enter based on the totality of the circumstances, including consideration of significant law enforcement officer and public safety, urgent humanitarian public health interests that warrant permitting the non-citizen to enter. I just thought, that's just gibberish, whatever. They've been relying on that one. That's essentially a fudge factor. But the next bit, which I missed, was an entire Willy Wonka bar of fudge. There's an exception in there, which I missed, for operational considerations. What that means is everything I've just been telling you. They don't have the resources, so just ignore it. Because they're in a triggered state right now, of course.
Yes.
All right. They immediately went to a triggered state. Illegal crossings in the last week have dropped from 4,000 per day to 3,000 per day, like which you expect when you got publicity for a new executive order saying, oh, we're going to turn you back. But it's a bit short of what was sold,
It's
isn't
still
it?
way above
100. Yeah. So what happened? A memo leaked from the very busy San Diego border sector. That's the most busy border sector. It said that Border Patrol agents are to send migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, or Mexico back to Mexico. They can't do it. Mexico's not taking them.
Yeah.
What happens then? No one knows. But that's not the best bit. They're going to bounce back, obviously.
Yeah.
All single adults immigrating to the US from the Eastern Hemisphere, that includes the Middle East, Asia, most of Africa, most of Europe, about 100 countries it includes, should be classified as hard or very hard to remove. Under the operational considerations exception, they're to be released into the US and allowed to seek asylum. The only exceptions are from 6 countries: Georgia, Moldova, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. People from those countries will be referred to fast removal.
Wow.
72% of the migrants who illegally crossed into the San Diego sector applying for asylum. Now, I'm not blaming the Border Patrol here. It's not their fault.
No.
They don't have any resources. The San Diego sector currently claims to be at 255% capacity. What are they going to do? So presumably what's going to happen now is that 1,000 that dropped off last week will just come back because they'll just go, well, this is bullshit. Here we go. Mexico's going to go, no, you can't just keep on doing this. So,
No.
so that's going to burn that. And they're just back to where they started. Just nothing. Just a waste of time. Meanwhile, there's another order coming through, a new status for the undocumented migrant spouses of American citizens. So these are undocumented migrants married to American citizens. They've found what they call an existing legal authority they call parole in place that would shield select undocumented migrants from deportation, allow them to work legally in the country, and to seek citizenship. That's new. Forward.us estimates that there's 1.1 million people who fall under the category, who are undocumented migrants and are married to American citizens.
Yes, yeah.
Then you add the extra effect amongst spouses, children, extended family and friends. You're talking millions of Latinos there, potential votes in Arizona, Nevada and Georgia, which is obviously what this is about. Now, there's a risk. It might attract some Latinos. It might repel other Latinos for the reason I told you before. A lot of those Latinos are now effectively white.
Yes, yeah.
The fact that we're talking about citizenship, that's an interesting area. That's a Republican conspiracy come true. Remember the Republican conspiracy? They're just trying to get them to vote. They're just trying to get them to make them citizens.
Yes.
They're trying to do it for these guys, right? And you try and convince those Republicans that they're not going to find some way for the other 10 million.
I'm really not buying into the poor Republicans have been fucked over by the Democrats here.
I'm talking Adam Langford only when I talk about that.
Adam Langford is part of the party that has resisted any meaningful negotiation about this for 30 years.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the fact that he's the most sane one in the current kind of zoo is sorry, I'm not even going to finish that sentence.
That's fair enough. All I will say is he is going to get himself primaried because he tried to solve the problem.
Yeah.
None of the Democrats are. He is. And so, like, I mean, you might not have much sympathy for that, but I do. And I think if people get punished with their career because they try to solve problems, no one's going to try and solve problems. Yeah. But I do take your point about the zoo.
Yeah, yeah.
That's anyway. I'm
like as cynical as all of this is. What Republicans are offering is equally cynical.
Sure. No, I'm not denying that.
Yeah, yeah.
And also, by the way, I'm not feeling sorry for the Republicans here that this is their nightmare come true.
Yeah.
This is me saying this is not going to make things better.
Yeah.
By validating the conspiracy theories, that's not going to help. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's I don't think that the president should unilaterally ignore the will of Congress, which is what Biden is doing here with this. I think they should all be citizens.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be some bullshit unilateral made up law. That's what it shouldn't be. You know? Anyway, and I'd be surprised if the Supreme Court let them as well.
No, I'm sure.
But anyway, but of course that will be after the election, and that's all that matters.
Yes.
So anyways, I'm feeling very depressed about this whole situation. And you're right about the people we should be most worried about.
Yes.
The asylum seekers are the ones we should be worried about because this is not making things better for any of them.
No.
Like especially the 350,000 that just got dropped off the just dropped off the list, have no ability to become legal ever.
Yes.
As a result of this bullshit. Anyway, so that is my take on that. Do you have anything else to say about that?
No.
Okay. The only thing I was left for you, I know I've got the call up, but you might want to you can either quickly or we can just put it off because this actually will hold the Caitlin Clark story.
Yes.
Do you want to do it quickly or do you want to put it off? It's up to you.
Just thinking how quickly I can actually do it.
It's up to you.
How much time have we got?
Let's go 5-10.
Okay, yeah, we can do it in that time. Okay.
All right. I'll just message them.
Yes, yeah. So Caitlin Clark, who was the most hyped college player ever to enter the WNBA, which she did a few weeks ago, has not been selected in the US Olympic team. Now, the background to this is not only was she the scoring leader in college basketball, she also has a huge number of fans. She has so many fans that the women's NCAA basketball tournament outrated the men's NCAA basketball tournament last year, which has never happened before. She's a phenomenal scorer. She can score from not quite anywhere, but seemingly anywhere on the court. She just got this massive cult following at the University of Iowa. She was drafted by the Indiana Fever. A lot of her games are selling out, which is something that doesn't usually happen in the WNBA. This is despite the fact that the Fever are not winning. The Fever have only won 2 games this season. That's not Caitlin Clark's fault. It's the nature of the draft that you get drafted to the worst team. Okay, so she's been left out of the Olympics team, and this has been described as a snub. Okay, so there's 2 issues here. One is, was she left out on merit? Second, if she wasn't left out on merit, should she just be in there for publicity reasons anyway? So let's take these issues one at a time. Like nearly everybody who has commented on this issue, I don't have nearly enough expertise about women's basketball to actually be able to comment about whether she should have been in there on merit.
Zero clue.
Yes.
Me as well.
What I will say is, I suspect that the USA Basketball Selection Committee, this presides over a women's team which has won the last 8 gold medals at the Olympics. I suspect that they selected a team in order to try to maximize their ability to win a gold medal.
Probably.
Yeah. Now, just to respond very gently to some of the criticisms that have been put out there, Nikki Haley, for example, tweeted that only one player in the WNBA has more assists than Caitlin Clark, and no player in the WNBA has made more 3-pointers this season, which is a few weeks old in the WNBA. Like, shouldn't the Olympic Committee be selecting the best team? Well, this is the problem. Okay, there are only 12 spots in the Olympic team. And when you're putting a team together, your considerations are not just who has the best stat line in this particular stat, okay? The fact that Caitlin Clark has the most made threes and almost the most assists in the WNBA, that reflects, first of all, that she is extremely good and is going to get even better in the future. Also reflects the fact that she plays in the worst team and they completely rely on her for basically creating all of their scoring opportunities. By the same token, she has one of the lower field goal percentages in the WNBA and one of the highest turnover rates in the WNBA. Not her fault. That's, once again, that's a product of the fact that her team leans on her so heavily to create scoring opportunities. The Olympic Committee may have just felt that she just did not fit in the team that they were putting together.
Apparently she's not great at defense either.
So her defensive stats are very low. That could reflect the fact that the Indiana Fever's defense is very
absolutely.
Reflection of the team. Look, to take another example, in the men's NBA, the American who ranked highest in MVP voting this year is Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks. He ranked 5th behind Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, and Giannis. Sorry, not Joel Embiid. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's Canadian, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Okay, so he's the highest ranking American. Did he make the US basketball team? No, he did not. Despite the fact he's arguably had the best NBA season of any American, didn't make the team because he's redundant on the team that they've put together. The team that they've put together is filled with people like Steph Curry, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, people who did not get that high in the MVP voting, but have been to the Olympics a lot of times before, and no one in their right mind would leave them off the team. In the same way, the women's team is stacked with veterans, with some of them really veteran, like Diana Taurasi, who's a year younger than me. Who, like me, the year of her birth was closer to World War II than it is now. She's won 6 gold medals.
Yes.
You're going to leave her off?
Yeah.
Now, arguably there's some politics involved there, like giving her a final victory lap or whatever. But the point is that I think Olympic teams, like there seems to be a premium that is put on experience.
And we should also say that Caitlin Clark does not have the best record of the people who have been left off.
No, she doesn't.
There are a number of people who have better records. In particular, not that I know who any of these people are, but I've seen their numbers.
Yes.
And Skylar Diggins-Smith and Arika Ogunbowale.
Yes, yeah.
Both clearly have better records this
Yes.
year. And there are others as well, but those ones unambiguously have a better record.
Neil Payne from ESPN says that of all of the rookies in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark currently has the 6th best statistical record.
Oh, there you go.
Although she got the Rookie of the Month last year, which because statistics don't reflect anything, don't reflect everything. So at the Tokyo Olympics, the reigning MVP of that year in the WNBA did not get selected. So the point is, you can't just look at things like MVP voting or Rookie of the Month or stat lines and say, well, that person should obviously be there. When selection committees put teams together in a team like basketball where team interaction and having the right person in the right position is so important, even though it may look like, to some people that she should obviously be there.
Can you explain just briefly for the Peppers why Nikki Haley cares? Like Nikki Haley's not a WNBA enthusiast. Why does she care? Just explain to them why she cares.
Because when she was in Iowa last year campaigning in the primaries, she fucked up Caitlin Clark's name. She referred to her as Caitlin Collins.
That's not what I'm going for.
Not a good move.
What you know what I'm going for, don't you? It's a culture war thing.
Yes, it's a culture war.
It's a culture war thing.
Okay. And that's what I'm going to get to now. So then there's a question, should she just be in there for publicity reasons? Admittedly, there have been instances in the past where people appear to have been selected in the Olympics mainly for publicity reasons. If you look at the first American men's dream team, that is when they first let professionals in, like Larry Bird was in there despite being 1,000,000 years old and way past his prime. They also, though, did put the best college player in the country, Christian Laettner, in it. He's often been cited as why they should put Caitlin Clark in. Now, suffice to say that the circumstances the men's team was facing then and the women's team is facing now are very, very different. So, okay, there's a couple of points here. One is the Olympic team is not just a marketing tool. And USA Basketball is not the WNBA. They're not under an obligation to promote the WNBA. But the second thing is there's a very nasty culture war aftertaste around all of this. So what you've got is Pat McAfee from ESPN said aloud what a lot of people were thinking when he was complaining about the fact that commentators keep talking about how good the WNBA rookie class is and how much positive attention they've generated. He's like, no, it's one white bitch from Iowa, right?
Right.
So, and there are all these new fans of the WNBA now. Some of them seem to be genuine fans. Others just really seem to be there for culture war reasons. There's this really nasty discourse of, well, there are all these new fans in the WNBA there now. You have to give them what they want. And what they want is Caitlin Clark, and more Caitlin Clark. Because unlike most of the players in the WNBA, she fits their profile of what American womanhood should look like. That is white, straight, attractive in very conventional heterosexual senses. So there are a lot of people getting behind Caitlin Clark who frankly just don't like what the WNBA often is.
And to be fair as well, she is classic corporate nice.
Yes,
she's Michael Jordan style.
Yes.
Shaking people's hands, signing basketballs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Always saying the right thing.
Yeah. So, but, this is a league dominated by black women. It's probably the most prominently LGBT league in the country. One major piece of attention it got over the last few years was the deal to get Brittany Griner back from Russia, which became a subject of massive right-wing conspiracies, and Donald Trump made it known that he didn't want her even back. She's in the team, by the way. So there's this real sense of entitlement, and I'll put something in the homework, an article in the homework about this. There's this real sense of entitlement from a lot of the Clark fans that because she's supposedly doing such wonders for the WNBA, right? And there's no question that, the attendance and viewership and everything is way
through the
up.
roof,
Yeah. That because she's doing all this, then, then she needs to be put at the front of everything all the time. That, I would say, is unambiguously not good for the game and also not good for Caitlin Clark.
Which she's not asking for.
She's not asking for it at all. Yeah. She said this would give her motivation.
Yeah.
To do better.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
I've got no problem with her at all. She
No,
actually
no.
seems like a lovely
No,
person.
she hasn't asked to be dropped into this, and she hasn't done or said anything on the culture war side. So, like, there's this discourse about she's getting fouled too much now, and she's getting defended too hard. This is probably because, as this article that I'm going to post points out, people have watched her college highlights and they realise you need to defend her everywhere on the floor, or she's going to, she's going to get some insane shot in. Right. So it wouldn't benefit her at all, actually, to be seen as a beneficiary of the pressure of her fans, which is essentially what a lot of people, like Stephen A. Smith, ESPN's worst blowhard, seem to be demanding that she's so good for the game that she needs to be treated specially. It's not good for her to be treated specially. That would undermine any perception of credibility. And this brings me to a sort of ultimate thought about this. So there is one theory that her own fans essentially sabotaged her chances, because if she got there, then they'd be constantly demanding that she gets more and more minutes.
And there was no doubt that if she got there, it would be as a backup point guard, which is the least number of minutes.
Exactly. Yes.
So she'd be looking at 3 minutes a game, 4 minutes a game, and her fans would be going nuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So keeping in mind that the US has won 8 gold medals in a row. If they don't win this time, then this is going to cause a lot of people to say, you could have used Caitlin Clark, whatever. Basketball can live with that. What they wouldn't be able to live with is if they sent her to the Olympics, if she fucked up by turning over or, getting off too many long-range shots that missed, and then the USA didn't win a gold medal, that'd be fucked.
Yeah, you're right.
That would actually that would damage her career. Yeah. That would actually damage the game if the Golden Girl, who they'd made the focus not only of the league but of the basketball team, actually got sent when she wasn't ready, and and couldn't perform. That would be a massive problem. And there was a good article in Defector by Maitrey Anantharaman about this, about the parallels with the 1996 decision, where there was a very good college player called Kelly Lobo who was sent to tryouts but realised herself that no matter how good she just was not ready to play with all of these veterans who had, so much more experience on the clock. So, it's been predictably ugly. There's been predictable culture war bullshit about this. It feeds into this particularly pernicious idea you get around basketball that college is somehow the superior game, that it's that the players are more disciplined and they're better with the fundamentals, and that the professionals are full of these lazy, overpaid players who don't really try very hard. And what it all comes back to is the 150-year-old complaint that why are we paying black people? Why are we paying black people to do things? That's what it comes down to.
You did that nice and quickly. Thank you very much, Dave.
Yes.
That was very well done. Thank you for everything, as always.
My
I'll
pleasure.
see you next week.
Yep.
And I'll see you guys on the other side of the white flash for Shaz Unleashed. See you, Dave.
See ya.
Welcome to the other side of the white flash, and welcome to Shaz Unleashed. Love the sting. Okay, by my count, having almost finished the edit, we have 24 minutes left before we hit the 3-hour barrier, so I might be able to squeeze in 2 quick stories. Let's see how we go. It might just be one. First of all, I want to start you off on a story from a few months back that we were going to cover, but we ran out of time. We never got a chance to cover it. But the story now has an ending as such. So I thought I'd bring it to you now, the complete story with the nice little ending. It's about Elon Musk versus Australia, because we are, of course, in Australia. I forget that sometimes. There was, you might recall, way back when there was a stabbing of a bishop in the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley. I must say I missed that completely because it's in Australia, which doesn't exist in my world, but I imagine many of our listeners are aware of that particular incident. The whole thing was on live stream. The video and the social media outrage that followed led apparently to 2,000 people descending upon the church, and it fueled a riot against the police, apparently. who were trying to protect the stabber from mob justice. 51 police ended up being injured. I can't believe I missed this story. The video is still easily available online. Well, you can find it at Rumble at least. I did. But it's not meant to be available, which is why I'm not showing it to you right now. Because Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, has been trying to take it down from the internet. By the way, Julie Inman-Grant is not just American, but she's an ex-Twitter executive, ex-X, if you will. And so it's interesting that this becomes a battle between her versus X. Okay, first of all, what's an e-safety officer? That sounds weird. E-safety officer. The idea of an e-safety commissioner was first floated in 2013 in Australia as a way to tackle the online bullying of children. It always starts with people asking, what about the children? Who'll protect the children? And then there's power creep from there. That's always the case. Although it's usually child porn rather than online bullying. This is a refreshing change. Anyway, its powers have since been boosted. Surprise, surprise. Of the 33,000 reports that the office received regarding potentially illegal content in the last financial year, the e-safety commissioner passed on about half of those as informal requests for URLs to be removed by the platforms. According to the Commissioner's Office, 99% of those related to child sexual abuse material. So that's the usual one, child sexual abuse. So 99% of them were child sexual abuse. Fair enough. No objections to that. It's the creep. That's the problem. Only 3 formal notices were issued in the last financial year related to violent content, which is where we are on this story. Why did Julie Inman-Grant want to ban this particular bit of footage? Well, given the riot that was caused by the footage, allegedly, I say the riot wasn't alleged, but that it was caused by the footage is the alleged part. I mean, I don't think it's very alleged. It's pretty clear, but whatever. You can't prove it. But I can understand the sensitivities. I can also understand the sensitivities of the families involved as well, like the families of the person who was stabbed and the stabber. The Australian Federal Police, in an affidavit to the federal court, said that the video could be used to recruit people to terrorist groups or to undertake terrorist acts. So as part of this process, Julie Inman-Grant obtained an injunction from the federal court for X to take it down. Why X in particular? Well, most other services just took it down, the video down immediately upon request. X had a slight objection, which we're going to get to in a second. The Julie Inman-Grant, the e-safety office, made clear that the removal notice does not relate to commentary, public debate, or other posts about this event, even those which may link to extreme violent content. It only concerns the video of the stabbing attack itself. She was very particular about that, not trying to shut down free speech, just trying to shut down this graphic video. And if X didn't shut it down, there was a maximum fine of $782,500 a day. That's all fine. The thing is, X was shutting it down. X has a policy of, let me just call it Twitter. I hate it. Elon, why? What's your thing about X? Jesus, it's so embarrassing to say. Aren't you embarrassed for yourself? On your card, it says you're the CEO of X. Not CEO, the owner. I don't know what your position is, but it's got a company called X on your business card. That is embarrassing. Anyway, X. I'm going to call it Twitter. Twitter has a policy of following local censorship laws. So they did take it down. They did in Australia, which is where the order was. But they didn't take it down from the rest of the world. Twitter blocked Australian viewers from seeing the video. That's what they did. And they said because there was a local order to take it down, so he took it down locally, not to people who weren't in Australia. That was their position. And this is where it gets tricky, because this court order for X isn't just for Australia, it's for the whole world. An Australian court was ruling for the entire world somehow. And like I said, the other social media companies had no problems with that. Meta said, yeah, fine, we're taking it down worldwide. But X said no. They said, while X respects the right of a country to enforce its laws within its jurisdiction, the E-Safety Commissioner does not have the authority to dictate what content X's users can see globally, it said. Which is fair enough for me. That makes sense to me. I don't know what you think, but it was open season on Elon amongst Australian politicians. In response, Tanya Plibersek said, it beggars belief, doesn't it, that this egotistical billionaire thinks it's more important for him to show whatever he wants on X or Twitter than to respect the victims of the crimes. No, it's a bit much, although I do like that she doesn't like the use of X either. Senator Sarah Hanson-Young from the Greens called him a narcissistic cowboy. Senator Jackie Lambie said, someone like that should be in jail and the key be thrown away. That's a real Jackie Lambie comment, isn't it? Throw away the key. Got to be in jail for the rest of their life because they didn't shut down this Australian graphic footage from people in Malawi. Throw away the key. X's argument was, or Elon's quote, was, our concern is that if any country is allowed to censor content for all countries, which is what the Australian E-Safety Commissar is demanding, then what does it stop any country from controlling the entire internet? That's a good question, I think, from Elon. In particular, what's to stop authoritarian countries from banning anything they don't want? Like, say, China demanding X ban clips and information about the Uyghurs. Do you think China's going to be restrained and going to hold back if they have that kind of power? Of course not. Like, this is such a can of worms. Even if you agree in this instance that you would like to see this particular video banned worldwide, it's setting a horrible precedent. And every time you set that precedent, it becomes a little bit easier for people to reinforce that precedent. So I think building a very high brick wall that is hard to get over is a great idea when it comes to court orders within countries. The government's argument, though, to be honest, is reasonable. I don't think they're being unreasonable here. It's just a difficult situation to maneuver around. The government's argument is, if you just ban it in Australia, Australians can still see it. They just need to use a VPN. Apparently a quarter of Australians use VPNs. I had no idea it's that high. It's just, I suppose we are an island nation, so and Australians like Australia is a little bit of a nanny state. There's a lot of things that are banned. Like, speaking for myself, leaving aside what I think you all know, those who know me have been watching for a while and listening for a while know that I have a predilection towards, shall we say, watching movies, all legal movies, of course. And but also I love online poker. I couldn't believe they banned that. Oh my God. Anyway, Australia's like banning things, so I suppose it's no surprise that VPNs have flourished. Anyway, their argument, I think, is very rational, but it is a foolish fantasy to think that you can crack down on video completely on the net. Like I said, it's freely available on Rumble right now, this video. I watched it for the first time, seeing as I hadn't heard of the story when I was preparing this stuff. There's always a place you can find it. But I can of course understand the logic of saying cutting down 90% of the traffic is still worth something, isn't it? Like, if the problem is you're trying to stop a riot, cutting down 90% of the traffic, internet traffic, is going to probably stop that riot. So that's all they need. They're not trying to stop every human being on Earth seeing it. They're trying to stop enough people in Australia to stop the problem. Okay, I get that. I'm not having a go at these people. I just don't like the way they're going about it. Also, by the way, full credit to the Australian legal system. It was a temporary order. It wasn't a permanent order. The court would only give them a temporary order. Well done, courts. And I'm much more sympathetic to temporary orders than to permanent orders. I can understand when the heat of the moment, you might go over the top with censorship. But if there's a sunset on that, of a reasonable sunset of only, in this case, it was less than a month. The order was from the 16th of April to the 10th of May. A 3-week order. That to me, that's a sweet spot. I like that. That's enough time for things to settle down. But as soon as possible, you're back on the road without the censorship. I like that. So I'll give him credit for that. Ultimately, though, I agree, obviously, with Elon's argument that countries shouldn't be able to ban anything worldwide for any reason. I just don't like that argument, even though the courts might disagree with me. But having said that, it's naive to think that what was going on here was that debate. I mean, this was not that debate. Everyone had their own alternative agenda that they were trying to use this story to promote. Like, it was a perfect issue to advance other interests. I'll give you an example. Albo used the fact that Albanese is our prime minister for our American listeners. Albo used the fact that we call our prime minister Albo. Albo used the fact that the killer was misidentified on social media as an excuse to push again, like he has repeatedly, for social media misinformation laws, which I really don't like. But anyway, that's his barrow, and so he was using this story to push that. Also off the back of the case, Albo announced a parliamentary inquiry into the impacts and influence of social media on Australia, and he roped the battle between Meta and the Australian news media, which is a whole different story, into this whole issue as well, and into his parliamentary inquiry. So this was another barrow he's trying to push. He's clearly trying to leverage whatever battle he can to pass social media reform. That's clearly his agenda. Opposition communications spokesperson David Coleman wants the government to adopt an age verification trial so fewer kids can see awful material. They've been pushing that for a while as well. That's their agenda, that they use this to try to promote. Once again, it's not about this story, it's about their other agenda. And by the way, won't someone think about the children? There's another example right there. It's always the children where they start just prying into your freedoms and gradually just creep, your freedoms disappear. Sarah Hanson-Young from The Greens said, Elon Musk is a narcissistic cowboy, I already quote that, who thinks he can give the middle finger to the Australian government because for too long we've had little to no regulation. We don't tax these guys and they've been able to do whatever they want for far too long. It's got to come to an end. We need stronger laws that deal with the business model of these big tech corporations. So those are the long-term Greens policies that they're pushing. Once again, using this story as a pretext to push what they actually want, which is higher taxes and more regulations for billionaires. Oh, and the Palmer United Party Senator Ralph Babet, or Babbitt, I don't know, he's Australian, I don't know how to pronounce his name, posted the clip himself. He posted the clip himself in defiance of the court, saying that the Libs, Labor and the E-Safety Commissioner are all a threat to democracy. So even though you'd think he'd be on my side, I can see what he's trying to do is exploiting this issue to self-promote, which they've been doing for a long time. That's a Palmer United special. Okay, I don't think they actually care about this stuff. They're promoting themselves. But yeah, maybe I'm being too cynical. Elon Musk has posted a bunch of memes about how awesome he is personally and how he's the one true free speech warrior, which is his agenda to promote that. Not the free speech part, but the part that he is the one true free speech warrior. He wrote, I'd like to take a moment to thank the PM for informing the public that this platform is the only truthful one. Oh, yeah. So self-stroking, that is a long-term project for Elon Musk. That's his agenda. There are no heroes here, but that's where we were at. So what happened? I told you there was an ending. Well, X vowed to fight the E-Safety Commissioner in the courts, and the E-Safety Commissioner crashed into reality as soon as they made contact with the courts, in this case for the renewal of the order in the middle of May. The federal court chose not to extend the order. Justice Kennett ruled that a global ban would not be considered a reasonable step required by Australian law because it would likely be ignored or disparaged in other countries. I agree. He found there were powerful issues with eSafety's attempt to regulate the global internet. I agree. He said it would be a clear case of a national law purporting to apply persons or matters over which, according to the Comity of Nations, the jurisdiction properly belongs to some other sovereign or state. I agree, even though I don't know what the Comity of Nations is meant to mean. I still agree. And he said what X Corp is to be permitted to show to users in a particular country is something that the Comity of Nations, there it is again, would ordinarily regard as the province of that country's government. I think I agree. But that didn't solve the broader question. That he cut down, so the temporary order was over in the middle of May. The order was done. Certainly the bits about internationally, there was no ban anymore. X was off the hook from that point onwards. But X was still challenging in the court the entire premise of the worldwide order from the beginning. Not just that it wasn't, not just challenging for it to be renewed, but challenging that it should ever have existed. They kept going with the court action. And that is the benefit of when you're dealing with a billionaire. They can afford to keep on going to make a point. And then last week, we got our ending. We got our resolution. The eSafety Commissioner put out a statement. I have decided to discontinue the proceedings in the federal court against X Corp in relation to the matter of extreme violent material depicting the real-life graphic stabbing of a religious leader at Wakeley in Sydney on 15th of April 2024. We now welcome the opportunity for a thorough and independent merits review of my decision to issue a removal notice to X Corp by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Okay, see what the court has to say. As the national online safety regulator, I expect responsible companies to be taking action in relation to this type of content, and by its own admission, X Corp routinely does. In a recent Digital Services Act transparency guide prepared by X Corp for the European Commission, X Corp said it took action on 226,000 items of content following reports of illegality and globally deleted 40,000 items of content. Through this process, eSafety has also welcomed the opportunity to test its novel regulatory powers set out under Australia's Online Safety Act to protect Australians from online harm. So what this means is they're giving up. They're giving up completely. White flag. And they openly admit at the end there, remember the bit about eSafety has also welcomed the opportunity to test its novel regulatory powers? They openly admit this was part of a process of testing out their powers. So thank God that Elon Musk stood up to them, because this was the beginning, by their own admission, of more of this. But because Elon Musk stood up to them, possibly unnecessarily, it doesn't matter. He still stopped them anyway to make a point. Because of that, they've stood down, and that is the new precedent, that they have given up trying to do this. Look, Elon Musk has a lot of faults. You hear about them on this podcast a lot. He seems to be primarily motivated by a desire to make the cool kids who are mean to him at school like him. He is way too susceptible to flattery, from my mind. He is way less intelligent about politics than he thinks he is, which is always dangerous. I find the ease with which he embraces and launders really nasty opinions disturbing. I also think he's a massive hypocrite. For all the times he fights for free speech, but for some people, for other people, he will be the problem. He'll be the person getting in the way of free speech and be blocking free speech, or he'll be threatening it with legal action. He does that a lot. So yes, he's a hypocrite, no doubt. But as far as obsessions from billionaires go, you can do a whole lot worse than being obsessed with freedom of speech, even the illusion of freedom of speech. I'd pick that over being obsessed with illegalizing abortion any day of the week. And that's what most billionaires seem to be obsessed with these days. And this is a case where Elon Musk's orneriness alone made a genuine difference to legal precedents set worldwide. This story, which has already disappeared in the mind of most people, I think actually is going to reverberate in the effects going forward. Australia's not going to be the last country that's going to try this, but if this had gone another way, it would have only been the first of a very large number, and it could well have been precedent setting for the rest of the internet going forward. So that threat, that temporary threat, has been headed off temporarily. So yeah, so this was a big deal. So yes, Elon Musk is a free speech hypocrite, but he's our free speech hypocrite. And today, in this one instance, that was good enough. And I think that's a nice note to end this podcast on. Given there's 2 minutes left before we hit the 3-hour mark. I'll see you guys next week. Till then, stay peppy.